they may be needing for their next stop. So pretty quiet to this point as it relates to the Red Sox. We're going to hear from Craig Breslow a little later on in the hour. But Red Sox manager Alex Cora was saying all week pretty much that he wants to just focus on the guys that he has, focus on winning games. His job already is hard enough. We talked to Alex Bregman yesterday. He echoed the same sentiments, said he wants to focus on the club that is in the clubhouse right now, and also focus on Friday because it'll be a reunion for him for the first time since he switched jerseys after being drafted by the Astros in the first round. He's going to be playing against him for the first time here at Fenway, so that'll be special. He said he was excited about seeing all his former teammates. I asked him who was your favorite teammate to play with in Houston. He said, I like them all, everybody. So pretty judicial there. I know his pops is going into politics, so something has rubbed off on him in that regard. Jan Duran said the same thing yesterday as we spoke with them after the win, after they won the series in Minnesota. He said if they add, they add. If not, we'll go to bat with the guys that we have here. So far, limited activity aside from myself standing out here on Van Ness and Jersey Street, braving the elements. But we'll keep you posted. If we hear anything for sure, we'll check back in with you guys over there in Watertown, TC.
Jemai, here's what you should do. Go on one of those tours, get in the ballpark, and then you ask the tour guide, well, where's the general manager hanging? Like, where's his office? Could we go see that? See if they will bring you over to the war room. Then you slip in and find out what's going on. We'll pay for the tour. It's a free tour. Don't worry about it.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea, actually. I think I know a few people. I might be able to get it for free 99. We'll see. I'll keep you guys posted.
I have no doubt you can pull that off. There you go. Get on it. All right, Jemai, stay there. We'll get back to you if anything's going on.
I haven't heard anything yet, no.
Oh, there you go.
We got fans passing by asking me if I've heard anything. Right. So
Live
I'm like, nothing.
TV.
Have you heard anything?
It's available on Nesson 360, or you can just drop by the corner of Van Ness and Jersey Street and ask Jemai what's going on.
Yeah,
that's our
here
new
all
platform.
Night.
Yeah. All right, Jemai, we'll check in with you in a bit. Thank you. We talk about this every year. Teams that are in it, you expect them to add. And if they struggle out of the gate after this and after not adding, you always immediately say, well, it's a letdown. The team, is that real? How real is that? As a GM, how much did you think that part of this is I just got to show this team we believe in them, I got to get them something?
Professionally, I like to think that it isn't a letdown, but I think guys look around and say, this team made a move, this team made it move, we didn't do anything. Who's helping us out here? Mm-hmm. So I think is a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah, guys in that locker room want big league players. They want help. They don't care about prospects that are going to help in 2 years. They don't. Some of them won't even be here in 2 years. Right. So they don't care about trading away the future so they want to go out there and get good players. And when a team doesn't, they can say all the right things. We believe in this group. This is why we didn't do anything. And the players will trick themselves into it, too, for a little bit, right? Like, we have what it takes. We can still do this. But the first bump in the road, in the back of that plane, people are sitting there saying, well, if we just went out and got somebody, we wouldn't be in this
position. The other thing that happens, as you know, is when they run guys out of the bullpen, guy after guy after guy, and they sit there and say, man, they keep coming at us with all these things that we don't have.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I always think back to 2019, right? Defending champs. They had gone on that little run. I think won 8 out of 11. That kind of coincided with the trade deadline. 8 straight losses after they didn't add anybody. Alex, you're nodding over there, so you clearly remember it as well.
Yeah, vividly. In that one, they had added Andrew Kashner, but then on the day of the deadline, there was the kind of startling reality of Dave Dombrowski not making a deadline day move and saying, well, we wanted to give this team an opportunity to win because they were defending champions, but we trust in them, but didn't feel like we needed to make any moves to supplement. And of course, the thing that they had done was they had been making Mookie Betts available in trade talks at that time at the deadline, but because they went on that late run, they pulled him off the table, ended up not dealing him at that point, and instead dealing him in the offseason. Now, this is speculative, but I've talked to people about who would Mookie have gotten you at that point, and there's some speculation on the part of the Red Sox that they would have been able to get Will Smith from the Dodgers had they moved him at that point instead of a few months later. So there are some fascinating dynamics that go into this.
But see, that's the talk, too, at the deadline. When you do go out, when you do go out and add a starter and add a bat and add an impact reliever, that talk after that deadline is we're doing this because we believe in this group. We want to help with this group. We think this group can be special. So you say all those things when you do add, but when you don't, you try to say the same. Like it just doesn't play. The locker room, they know. The guys have been around there long enough. There's some veterans in there. They know what it means.
Right.
They don't want to hear you tried.
Most teams that have gone deep, Rob, of the 4 championship teams and most of the teams that went deep, there was a significant pick, right? Evaldi and Pierce at the 2018 deadline. They didn't need a lot, but they still went out and had.
Yeah, look at last year with the Dodgers. I mean, they don't win the World Series probably without the Kopech, without Edman, without Flaherty. This is how it works. And to your point, Evaldi, they needed a starter. It shows you how hard it is to get a starter because he wasn't like this be-all, end-all starter. But another example of the clubhouse was 2022, right? Where Matt Strom had this great line and said, it felt like we were playing field position. We kick it inside the 10, and they bring in Tom Brady. And the next thing we're putting on our heels, like what's going on? That you have to feel like you're going for it. And guys, they are in the playoffs right now. They are in the position. They know what they need. You know what you need to go forward. You have the prospects to do it. It just, more so than any other year I can remember, it seems so simple to me.
We had a board up a minute ago. Maybe bring that back up. Some of the names that have been moved so far kind of rushed through as we were talking coming out of July. But there have been names that have been moved, right? I mean, you take a look at what San Diego has done, adding some offense. O'Hearn and Laureano coming from Baltimore. Houston, we told you about Correa. Bednar, big relief pickup for the Yankees, but they've made other moves as well. The Dodgers always doing something. Mason Miller and J.P. Sears going to the Padres. Bieber to Toronto. That's interesting. Coming back from Tommy John surgery. See what he can do before the end of the year. Eugenio Suarez to Seattle. And, of course, Seattle doing a whole lot more than that as they had already added bat and offensive help earlier with Josh Naylor. They take a look at what the Mets have done. The Phillies always active. Duran, we were waiting for that to happen over the last few days in Minnesota, and it has happened. Interesting that Houston goes out and brings back Correa. Interesting for the Red Sox because they're going to play the Houston Astros 6 of the next 12 games. We're going to see what Correa does. He's agreed to play third base, according to reports. That's where he'll fit in.
Well, maybe he settles in, maybe in Houston. I don't know, but he's having kind of a downtime in Minnesota. I look at that list and I see the Yankees got Bednar, get all those great closers. Those are impact guys, a lot of them in National League. Seattle really stands out. I mean, I've been waiting for this, unfortunately, and it happened for years with the Seattle Mariners. When you look at their rotation and say, okay, when are you going to add some offense? Well, Rosarena was there, and all of a sudden Naylor's there, and now Gino Suarez is there, and you're like, oh boy, you got some issues out there out west. But I'm looking at that list, like nobody really yet. Again, starting pitching's what I want. I wasn't all in on Bieber. I know him, he's a good pitcher and all, but at the same point, he just came back from Tommy John. What are those first 2 months going to be like? I don't know. So we'll wait and see.
Back to you were just talking about Suarez added, Josh Naylor added. You got Cal, the big dumper already there ahead of him. Like all of a sudden, and that pitching staff hasn't performed to its ability. Like that could be, as they get healthier, a really good staff once again. Seattle could suddenly be the team to beat in the American League.
And I think the one thing that Seattle's doing is they're preparing for the playoffs. And where the team has that viewpoint, they're going for it. They've got more power now that they've had, but their starting pitching is what's going to get them deep in the playoffs. And now they got a couple of reasons to come at you offensively on the corners with those two guys. I really like what Seattle did. I think they're the front runner in the American League right now.
Right? They're in the back of the pack of contenders right now. So that's fascinating and reminds you about how flat the American League landscape is, that a team can be in that spot, and yet it's very reasonable to look at them as the American League favorites coming up from their position. A reminder of how, because this is not a year of superpowers, you have a chance. If you're in that postseason spot, you can have a very special October.
And, one more thing when it comes to what the Mariners did. You notice that none of us have talked about what they gave up? Because nobody cares. All they care about is how good their big league team is. Their big league team is loaded. They got a chance to go to the World Series. I'm not sitting here talking about what they gave up. I don't care. Like, nobody in that clubhouse cares. They got better. That's what matters.
Well, as you know, pitching is what carries you to the playoffs.
Yeah.
They've got the pitching. In order for them to get there, they need some offense. They address that. The pitching is going to carry them in the playoffs.
The Padres get Mason Miller. There's a lot of talk what he might do for somebody. All of a sudden, Padres are in a weird situation, right? They began the week talking about trading Dylan Cease. Are they going to go all in? Are they going to move some guys? Well, clearly they're trying to make a run for it here before it's all said and done.
Preller, he doesn't sit still. You got to give him a lot of credit. He's a lot of things, but one thing he isn't is bashful. And there's a guy those players gotta love. He walks in that clubhouse every year this time of year and says, "Hey, I got you some help." What a guy to get.
you know, and you go back to the GMs like that, right? Preller, DePoto, who you were just talking about with Seattle. How much do you love when they get out ahead of it and send the message early on? Going back a couple years ago, Carlos Santana. Last year, Rosarena a little bit early. This year, you get Naylor a little bit early. And Preller, everybody knew this was happening. The shock and awe of A.J. Preller is a time-honored tradition. And it's great. I mean, you go look at the guys that he has traded, good players, but that's the cost of doing business. Let's not forget. The whole idea is winning the World Series. And if they don't run into the Dodgers last year, the Padres probably win the World Series.
All right, so that's a lot of the names that have moved so far. Waiting to see if the Red Sox have another move up their sleeve. Can they add pitching to this group? You look at some of the players available, starting pitchers like Keller and Alcantara, Gallen, Kelly, Cease, Lugo, all a possibility. Ozuna obviously could add some pop as well. We are here right up through the trade deadline that comes your way at 6 o'clock. We'll stay on afterwards as well. Peter Abraham of the Boston Globe going to be joining us. There he is from his war room at home. He'll join us when we get back. Stay with us. It's a tradition unlike any other, the NESN MLB Trade Deadline special. Peter Abraham of the Boston Globe joining us from his own war room. He is standing by. Peter, we got the one move just before midnight last night with Steven Matz coming. One would assume the Red Sox are working on adding pitching, right?
You would think so, TC. And I think you have to go back to the trade of Rafael Devers when Craig Breslow flew to Seattle and met with the team and said, we still believe in you. This is not waving a white flag. We're not giving up on the season. We think this is a group that can still win. If they actually meant that when they said that in Seattle, they need to prove it over the next, whatever we have now, an hour for them. You know, if they believe in this group, it's time for them to show it.
A lot of moves today, obviously, but the starting pitching market has been obviously late developing, and now we're in with like 37 minutes left. Do you think there will be a flurry of moves, or is this one of those things that maybe just goes too late and there aren't many moves on the starting pitching market?
Well, it feels like the Diamondbacks control that with Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen. Those might be the two biggest names in terms of starters that are going to go before the deadline. I know Texas is looking for a starter. Obviously, the Red Sox are looking for a starter. You would have to think that those are the two guys that teams that haven't made the big move they wanted to make will be focused on what the Diamondbacks can offer them.
We've been showing a lot of what everybody else has done. How much has the playoff race changed here over the last few hours?
Well, the Red Sox were a game behind the Yankees at the start of the day, and the Yankees have done a lot to improve their team with Bednar some of the just, kind of smaller moves like getting a platoon at third base to improve their position there, doing some things to improve their bullpen. The teams all around the Red Sox in the playoff race, Seattle and the Yankees, the Tigers, the teams that they could face down the road if they were to make the postseason, all of those teams have made significant moves to improve their team. And right now, Steven Matz could help, but you would think the Red Sox have more work to do.
No doubt about that. The Matz deal, were you surprised that a left-handed reliever was the first move they've made so far?
Well, they seem to have plenty of those, TC. So, yeah, I was surprised. It would seem like, a multi-inning guy, he might take over the role that's held by Chris Murphy right now. But his splits show that, he's much better against lefties than he is against righties. So you wonder how they can make that work with, Brendan Bernardino and Justin Wilson and their other lefties. So a guy who could help them, but you would certainly think not, that's not going to be the only move they make.
All right, Peter, good stuff. We appreciate it. If you get anything, yell to the producers and we'll bring you right back on right away. Otherwise, we'll check in with you shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, TC.
Peter Abraham joining us as we approach this trade deadline. You take a look at those standings that Peter was just talking about. There's a lot of talk here that the Rangers may be getting close to acquiring Merrill Kelly. Has anybody heard anything? You guys over on the news table hearing anything?
No, just about Kelly, the same thing, that it looks like the Rangers are going to get him. And, that's, to me, that's not a great thing for the Red Sox, because I looked at him, and I think, Lou, you said the same thing. This was the guy that made a lot of sense for them, a guy who could pitch in the postseason, a guy who had proven that he's done it in the past, a guy who's had a really good year, and a guy that you're not just hoping that he's going to have a good year. So it's a good pickup for the Rangers.
Right. He's the guy who would have delivered stability as well as kind of a clear path to being a postseason contributor. And so now there are still guys on the board. It's worth emphasizing that the starting pitching market is the one area that's been slowest to develop. So you still have Zach Gallen in Arizona. You still have Sandy Alcantara in Florida, as well as Cabrera in Florida, and other guys. The Orioles pitchers such as Charlie Morton, Zach Eflin getting injured today is noteworthy. He's been a guy who the Red Sox have had interest in the past, but this is one of the big names in the starting pitching market off the board.
Charlie Morton is a guy that he's a name been thrown around a lot. What would we make of Charlie Morton if he came to the Red Sox? What would that do?
It'd be a body in the rotation.
I honestly, I think people sleep on Charlie Morton a little bit right now because I look at, we talk about Cease and we talk about Gallen, and yeah, you can take flyers, even Alcantara, you can take flyers on him. But I look at what the guy has done, and Charlie Morton, yeah, is he going to start in the postseason game? Maybe a game 4 or something along those lines. But he has been really good going back to the beginning of June. And, that's, I think, an 11-start stretch. He's had one bad outing. And for all these guys that we're talking about, not a lot of guys can say that. And I get it. He could break down. He's older. That's fine. But, compared to some of these other names,
I don't want to completely, disrespect. I was just reacting to Jeff Passan making it official that the Rangers got Kelly, and I'm just in a bad mood.
It was too raw.
No, it was got me in a bad mood. It's just like Charlie Morton's not the Charlie Morton he was 2 or 3 years ago. We know that. So when I say a body, it's like, listen, they need it. They need somebody right now. Their 5th starter's down in AAA. And to be honest with you, Richard Fitz should probably stay there and get on a 5-man rotation, and to get some balance into his season, which he hasn't had. So they need somebody. But the Charlie Morton, Aaron Savale was sort of like, we got nothing. We can't pull anything off.
Well, that's because
we don't get these guys.
You couldn't get a number 2, which is what everybody, you want to go get a number 2, right? But you don't want to overreact to one game, one outing. But Richard Fitz kind of had his last shot to show that he could be that 5 right now.
And I think
he's back in the minors, JP.
Yeah.
So if you're the GM, if you're Greg Breslow, if you strike out on the number 2, you got to scramble and get a number 5. You need a body, as Lou said.
And there's a couple of ways to look at the trading deadline. You either hit it with the big guy, or you do what the Yankees are doing, supplement. And I think if they get Charlie Morton, that's what they're trying to do. He's a 5-and-fly guy, so it's a guy that they feel more confident than Fitz right now. And they're just building depth. I know it's not sexy, but at this point, sometimes depth becomes more important because you only got it down to 2 months in the season.
And it's like Matz.
Exactly.
You got a lot of lefties,
it's just
but you need depth. So you need it, right? But when you say that the starting pitching hasn't come off the board yet, but Gallen's the other.
It's coming.
He's the other rental. The other ones, You know, you're going to pull a last-minute deal for Joe Ryan, who's got 2.5 years of service, or Sandy, or Cabrera. Like, that to me seems like those are out the window now. You know, now you're looking for rental.
I don't think the window was ever really open for Joe Ryan, right? Like, that's been the kind of daydream for a lot of people. But I don't think there was a point where either Duran or Abreu as a centerpiece was going to get it done. Those guys are now off the table because of the uncertainty about Marcelo Meyer that's moved Cedar Rafaela into the infield, right? So there's not a package. I have not thought at one point that the Red Sox or anyone else was going to be able to convince the Twins to make a move involving Joe Ryan. So he's been kind of the gold standard, and then a lot of the other options are just kind of Kelly is kind of the top of the rest of the class, where it's a mid-rotation guy, and then you have back of the rotation guys.
We have to remember what their goal was heading into this deadline, which was finding a starter who could pitch in a postseason game. And so, like, however you get that, you have to get it. If that's your goal and you feel like that's the way you're going to get to where you want to go, then you have to do it. And it isn't up yet. But, you know, and I say, you know, I'm talking up Charlie Morton, but I think that you put it well, JP. It is what it is. But still, that doesn't mean that you aren't losing focus of what you had your goal is, which is if you want to get to where you want to go, you have to get that guy that you tried to get.
To me, you set the bar like above Buehler, right? Because Buehler's an uncertainty right now. There's a chance that Buehler can pitch really well down the stretch, leapfrog back whomever you acquire, and be the guy who's established in the postseason and be a good contributor. But you don't know that. So to me, you need someone who's better than Buehler and the TBA that's currently occupying spot number 5 in the rotation. And that's where you start.
I mean, technically, you are an upgrade over TBA. I mean, somebody who's breathing and control.
I am well below replacement level, my friend.
An upgrade over TBA. Which is why I think that the Blue Jays picking up Shane Bieber is so fascinating. Because I think that's a guy where you figure out what he is. There's a pretty wide range of it because you don't know. He's coming back from Tommy John. You know what he was. You've seen him in the minor league rehabs, and they've been good by all the reports. But you don't know. You know, Lou, you said it before. Guys coming back from Tommy John aren't necessarily ready to grab it and go here over the last 2 months of the season.
And if he's ready in the playoffs, so be it. I mean, that's the kind of guy you get with it, his experience. You're waiting on the TJ to get back. Let him keep building up. You don't need him right now. You might need him sometime in September. But he could be the difference in October. They've got a good rotation right now. I thought it was a really creative move for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, it's good for that team, right? Because you're talking about that rotation.
Right.
Like, they can wait. Like, he might have one more rehab start. They can give him a couple more, whatever it may be, and just sort of, because he's more depth for them. They've got guys. You have 4 starters right now. You know, if you're looking for, not, to be honest with you, not just a guy that can slide in a rotation, but depth as well on top of it.
Well, what's interesting is the names that are left. The 2 guys who are sort of wild cards are Cease and Gallen, right? And because we've seen what they can do in the past, but they haven't done it this year, they kind of fall in line with the Buehler's thing. Maybe you could get them and they could go on runs, but that's a big maybe. But you know, they're intriguing because they've done it before, and maybe that's the route they have to go. I don't know.
I'll throw a name out there that I think is no one's mentioning that I would love to see the Red Sox get is the Anderson kid, the left-hander with the Angels. I don't know if they're going to make a run for it, but he's competitive. He has below-average stuff, but that guy competes. It's the kind of guy that can stabilize a rotation, 3rd or 4th starter for them. That would be an upgrade for me, and no one's mentioned his name. I don't know if he's on the market or not, but I'd like to see.
It's because it's the Angels. We don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's true. But
the other Blue Jay moves for Anthony Dominguez a couple days ago, right between the games of the doubleheader with Baltimore, so he could walk across and throw against them in the second game. The Jays are a better team right now than they were at the beginning of the week.
Yeah, no, they are. They added bullpen help, right? And you got Bieber coming as well. So, yeah, they've improved. Like, a lot of it is pitching related. You know what I mean? And the starter, obviously, to me, Merrill Kelly is the one that kind of really hurts you. Were you in the market for one of these outstanding closers? I don't know. I don't think so, you know, but you're still waiting for an arm. And I don't know what you guys feel about the bat, you know. I mean, but it could be depending on what's going on with Meyer. Is there a second baseman out here you can grab in the next 30 minutes, or is there a first baseman or whatever just sort of help with that depth?
The one thing I look at the Red Sox, they're 5th in the league in runs scored. I wouldn't worry about scoring runs. I would worry about getting as much pitching I can, whether it's a big guy or it's depth. Better than what you have in AAA. If you're running that out there, you're going to be in a better situation. And I'm not even sold the Blue Jays are going to win the division. They only got a 3-game lead on the Yankees. So I still think that's a lot of things capable for the Red Sox if they could do a few things here.
All right, I don't like to spend a lot of time quoting X because there's a lot of stuff. But John Morosi of the Major League Baseball Network, the MLB Network, just tweeted out the Red Sox have made a late effort to acquire Joe Ryan, according to sources. So if you're going to wait till the last minute of the deadline, go get Joe Ryan. I'm all in. It was worth the wait if anything like that could be real. Again, these things do not always pan out. But at this point, with 26 minutes remaining, so here's the question for a guy who spent a lot more time in the war room than we did. With a half hour to go, you're making a late push on a big name that's going to take a lot to put together. How often can you throw this thing together? Clearly, they've had discussions. You're not doing this from step one. But if you're re-engaging with less than a half hour to go, how hard is it to get that deal done?
If you got the players, and the Red Sox have them. We said that before. We were talking earlier. The Red Sox are the one organization that has all the resources to make a major move, a mid-range move, or a low move. But if they really want to fire their bullets, they could go get Joe Ryan. They got a lot of good players that they can give up.
The one thing that I should say, like, as I was kind of disparaging, downplaying the notion of a Joe Ryan trade, I do wonder whether or not the Carlos Correa trade completely changes the way that the Minnesota Twins look at the world, particularly their competitiveness in 2026 or 2027. Because if so, then maybe those 2 years of control with Joe Ryan have less value. But that is an awfully hard deal to be able to put together for a guy who is a long-term controllable front of the rotation.
All you have to do is say yes. If they ask you for this guy, yes. If that guy, yes. That's how you make a trade.
So
if you keep waiting, then
we saw what it took to get Garrett Crochet, who had a year and a half of service time, and really not as much track record. It was fantastic for 3 months, right? Everybody thought they knew what it could be, but we saw that type of deal during the season. I would think the deal for Joe Ryan, 2.5 years of control, starts there, and it's going to be even more costly.
More so. Yeah.
Well, Cease 2 years ago, Crochet last year, Ryan this year. I mean, everybody knows that, and JP, you know this, what Derek Falvey's doing, he's going to prey on the desperation of a team. Well, maybe the Red Sox are just desperate enough, and their desperation has to start with the crown jewel of their farm system right now is Peyton Tolley, right? If any deal with Joe Ryan, I have to imagine involves Peyton Tolley, and I would absolutely say, go get him, because I'll come back to it. You have 2 years after this year, and the goal is to win the World Series. Go do it.
You got a proven major league player. That's what you're looking for, major league players. This guy is a good major league player. He's an all-star. That's what you go get. How many of those are left on the board?
With 2 years left after
exactly.
this year.
And then you could switch him around a year from now if you wanted to trade him.
If that's all it took, I mean.
No, it's more. But
like the centerpiece, or like maybe the guy.
Okay, who you got?
Well, exactly, because
keep coming.
Like a year ago, because you said the word Peyton Tolley at the draft, you're able to get Joe Ryan the following year. 100%. The beauty of it is you can draft again next year. You've already drafted arms this year. Like, this is the one thing. Like, we talk about prospects. It's like you get to draft them every year. Now you got to do the right thing. But if you trust your system, which I think these guys do now, like they can replace it. They can draft guys. They have confidence.
And they drafted Kyson Witherspoon in the first round this year. They view him as being a high-end arm. Peyton Tolley, the projection, I think, is there's a great deal of optimism in the Red Sox system about the idea that he could be a number 3 or better, that's a really good pitcher in the major leagues. That's maybe one day, if he hits that, which again, hitting potential versus actually performing at that level is a potential is different than performance.
Once again,
Joe Ryan is performing at that level.
Well, let me ask you this. First game of the playoffs, Garrett Crochet. Second game, Ryan, how you feeling about your...
Well, you know what? 2025, 2026, 2027.
How you feeling about your team then?
Pretty good. And the other thing is that you have the quotes. I think Dan Hayes, who covers the Twins for The Athletic, had the quote from an anonymous player in the Minnesota clubhouse saying, I don't want to be around here if this is going to be like this. I'm not saying that's Joe Ryan, but, we got the quote from Joe Ryan at the All-Star game, said, hey, that might be interesting to be traded.
Well, but you mentioned it, how much it changes, right? If you're going to burn it down around somebody, why are you keeping somebody? Burn it down, start it from scratch, right? I mean, you're kind of getting yourself stuck in the middle if you're keeping one guy for 2 years while you reconstruct the entire thing.
TC, we went to the playoffs one year in Oakland. We're playing the Yankees. Gil Heredia was our opening day starter in the playoffs. I looked at Billy Beane. I said, we got Gil Heredia, they got Roger Clemens. How you like this matchup? You throw those two guys out there in the playoff, you could beat anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. So we'll see. An intriguing rumor that has popped up now with, 21 and a half minutes to go. They are apparently trying to put together something, if the report from John Morosi is correct, that the Red Sox are trying a late push to land Joe Ryan, who would be as big a name as a pitcher as you could get at this point. All right, Red Sox have made the one move coming in. Where are we going here? Let's go to what has happened around baseball. Here's what the Yankees did. You talk about teams in the race in both the East and the wild card who have done a lot. This feels like stringing together 4, 5, 6 singles. You didn't go for the home run, but you kept the line moving. You put the bat on the ball a few times. Is it enough to put them over the top?
Well, they need pitching, too, because obviously they've had such a strain on their pitching. But
Bednar helps. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think
is...
every year Cashman does something. He doesn't sit still. And I think he has subscribed more to the theory of getting depth. And the depth is what's paying off for these guys. And, if you can mix and match here and there, I think it's a plus.
I mean, Derek Shelton, I think, was on MLB Network Radio today. He said that Bednar has been the best relief pitcher in baseball. Now, I mean, that's hyperbole maybe, but it shows you how good it is. And if you can get Devin Williams right, you can get Luke Weaver right, you get Bednar, I mean, that's all that is lethal.
Well, I think the other thing is they realize their starting pitching's a little limited, so they're going to try to shorten the game with a better bullpen. Good philosophy.
All right,
if I was a Yankee fan, just real quick, and I was in on Geno Suarez and got Ryan McMahon, I don't know how I'd react to that. But I'll say this, it's still about Judge, isn't it? Like you can go do anything you want. Hopefully he comes back, but they did. They fixed up some things. Rosario's a good hitter. McMahon's a great defensive player, and he's been swinging it the last
And they can play matchups the rest of the way. They don't have to have that guy get 250 at
I think I'm just used to the Yankees kind of being like, oh, they just traded for Randy Johnson, and stuff like that for years.
Jake Bird, where does that fit in?
Bullpen piece, right?
Yeah.
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 Well, I
Just
think
more
they're looking
depth,
at their starting. Yeah, I think they're looking at as much depth as they can build in that pen to shorten the game for their start. How many teams? That's why Seattle's is really interesting, because they got the starters to go deep in games. These other teams that don't, they got to shorten the game on the back end.
Well, look at what the Mets did. I mean, the Mets basically did that as well with Helsley, so you've got a couple key guys yesterday, and it's because their starters are a little suspect right now. And I'm a little surprised the Mets actually haven't gone out and been a little bit more aggressive in the starting pitching market. But they got a great bullpen right now. Their starters are good enough. But JP, I'll come back to exactly what you said. Boy, it's sure nice to have those 1-2. Much like, by the way, Arizona did a couple years ago. Gallen, Kelly, boom, boom, there you go.
And you get in a 7-game series and you could throw Crochet out there 3 times, I'll take my chances with that.
Well, Red Sox are counting down the time here along with the rest of Major League Baseball. 18 and a half minutes remaining. We are waiting to see if something comes together at the end. I guess we're just running through what the Yankees do. Austin Slater.
We had Slater in San Francisco. He's just a serviceable guy to hit against left-handers.
Poor Austin Slater. Throw him in there,
He's a great guy.
We got time to fill. Let's get to Austin Slater.
I like him personally.
God,
There's a reason why he's been with 6 teams.
I know. Oh, God. We got 18 minutes left. I'm laughing because I don't want to cry. I'm going to figure something out.
But there are guys, that have been picked up that are useful guys that you say, okay, they could have helped. Willie Castro just went to the Cubs, right? Correct. And then you have a relief pitcher that I like, Kyle Finnegan. He came from the Nationals, closed for them, but it didn't cost a whole lot. So there's guys who we're going to look back at and say, hey, you know what? That was a key piece of there. Much like the Dodgers last year, I'll come back to them. Nobody was really saying, oh my goodness, you got Kopech and Edman and Flaherty. Sure enough, they were key guys.
That's why I said if you build depth, you can do a lot of different things. McMahon, I know he's not having a great year, but he's a left-hander in Yankee Stadium, and you could platoon him at the right spot. It could end up being a plus.
Jazz Chisholm was a big pickup for them last year.
Yeah, absolutely right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, and that is the thing. Listen, sometimes we do this and we talk about guys and we make nothing of it and they wind up catching fire. McMahon's off to a good start for them since he joined them.
Well, let's go back to 2021. Probably their most successful one. You have Kyle Schwarber. He had a bad hamstring. Everyone's screaming and yelling while they're losing games. He's not playing. Like, what did you do? All you got was Austin Davis and Hansel Robles. And then by the end of August, you're like, oh my goodness, you got Austin Davis, Hansel Robles, and Kyle Schwarber. Look at what you did. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a little bit hidden, but I tell you what, wouldn't be hidden: Joe Ryan.
Man, I wish you were a GM when I was working.
I think you and I would work the same way. We get deals done pretty quick.
All right, we're going to take a break here. Closing in the final quarter hour before the trade deadline, pouring over at Fenway Park. Are the calls pouring in? That's the question. Behind those windows, what is happening? We won't even get white smoke out of this because the rain's coming down so hard. It's our trade deadline special. We'll come back, take you right through the deadline, see if the Red Sox can pull off a move at the end. And we welcome you back 13 minutes plus until the trade deadline. Red Sox Nation has been waiting. I don't know about you guys. The texts from my buddies have not been particularly positive over the last couple of hours. And then if you follow social media, Red Sox fans very upset with the lack of action. And then came the John Morosi report from MLB Network maybe about 10 minutes ago that the Red Sox were engaged in a late push to try to get Joe Wright. And suddenly it's a whole different tenor from Red Sox fans out on social media because this is the kind of deal that could change everything. So, again, nothing more than that at this point. But the report from Morosi certainly has energized the fan base. Again, I've asked you time and again, JP, as a guy in the war room, and when you're now, if this is real, and you're this engaged, this late before the deadline, are all the other deals off now? Like, are you all in on one thing and there's nothing else that
it's hard to be juggling a couple of deals right now, especially the magnitude of this kind of guy. And we've said it earlier, the Red Sox have the personnel to get this guy. If they were able to go out and get him, I think this would be a major, major coup for them.
So let me ask you, so you're sitting there, right, and you're debating back and forth, and I'm guessing it's over a player or two.
Yep.
And you don't want to include him. How hard is it to sit there and say, no, hang up and go, we'll take just Matz?
When I'm looking,
like how hard would that be?
It's not that hard when I'm looking at this guy. When I got 2.5 years of control, I don't care who they want.
But if you're the Red Sox, yeah, but you'd be like, no, I don't want to give that player up. Like
Why?
I'm saying the last minute.
Why?
No, I'm agreeing with you. The last minute, how do you not just sit there and say, fine, done? Send it.
I would have done it 10
Find
minutes
a fax
ago.
machine that works.
Yes.
Hey, you know who else? You know who else?
By the way, hang on. Royals have just picked up Bailey Falter, so some moves are going down now. That helps Kansas City.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the end of any hope that Rich Hill might squeeze out one more start. That's the end of that. Okay, sorry.
Hold on, let me get my stopwatch.
Tell
out.
Rich. I apologize.
But you know who else besides social media, so besides the fan base about Joe Ryan? That clubhouse. I mean, let's not forget that the clubhouse. Going back to the beginning of the month, Joe Ryan, everyone was talking about, you go to the All-Star game, pictures with Bregman and Crochet. Giolito was a guy who worked out with Joe Ryan in the offs. They all love Joe Ryan. This would be a big, big thing in that respect.
Hang on, Alex, you got something?
It looks like Jeff Passan is reporting that the Red Sox are getting Dustin May. He's a guy who I reported the Red Sox did have interest in. The Red Sox did have interest in. The Dodgers had deployed a bunch of scouts to Greenville in the days leading up to the trade deadline. So this wouldn't come as a bolt from the blue. But Dustin May is a guy who's going to get squeezed in the Dodgers rotation because of the return of Blake Snell, and so he would represent a guy who's a pretty electric arm. His performance has been uneven. He was so spectacular. He was untradeable on the Mookie Betts conversations back in 2020. Now his career has taken kind of a different direction. He's going to be a free agent after the season, but he would represent an interesting guy who could fill in the rotation and also maybe be a high-octane bullpen arm in October.
Yeah, if he could be the guy who fills in your number 5 starter role now, and then a guy that you can come out of the bullpen in the playoffs.
This is not Joe Ryan.
But he goes back to what you said.
Yeah.
At that point, they may pivot. If they have a pivot, that's great.
Yeah, no, I like Justin.
I just want to see the Wally the Green Monster head on Dustin May. Like that has to happen.
He probably won't hit a home run.
As long as he doesn't hang another first pitch slide of the Bregman for a 3-run homer. But his stuff plays.
5-inning performance, gave up those 4 runs in that outing against the Red Sox. That was his last start. Prior to that, he had gone a strong outing against Minnesota. By and large, he's been good.
And he's a couple of years, I think, removed from Tommy John.
Yeah, he missed all of 24. Was that last year?
Yeah, so he's still coming back.
Full year.
Yeah.
Still coming back, but he's made 18 starts.
The only thing with him is like you would have thought that, with the time, and he seems young in the league, he's a free agent of the year. I mean, it is a rental, but the arm, I do like the arm, and it's almost a little similar to kind of, Tanner Houck type of stuff.
I actually had a similar reaction when I was watching him the other day. Like the way that he kind of springs around on the mound. It's a different kind of springiness and strange athleticism. Like the body moves in a different way than the typical pitcher. And I was like, that's kind of Houkish in a very weird way.
And there's a report now, which I just lost, but it's being reported that Alcantara is staying in Miami. So that is a name off the board. That, according to Fox Sports MLB, Sandy Alcantara is staying in Miami. That is according to Craig Mish. So one name off the board.
And I could see teams being really hesitant to go out and get him coming back from the Tommy John. You're banking on him making a complete recovery, which they usually do, but there's still that build-in. So I could see where teams wouldn't want to.
Yeah. That was for the Red Sox. Anytime they were talking about him, saying, "Listen, you need a guy that you have a pretty good idea what you're getting for the last couple of months, or certainly in the postseason." I don't know. You know, was that way, Joe Ryan? I don't know if you know that. let it be said, let it be done.
So we've got 8:08 till maybe that gets done, but it has not been done, only said so far. If it is Dustin May, and that's the end of it, you got a starter, you got a reliever, how are the Red Sox significantly better, somewhat better? Where would they be after those 2 additions?
I think they're better, but when you look at Seattle and you look at Texas, I don't think they kept pace with those teams, and that's your competition.
So that's an interesting way to look at it, right? You've improved yourself, but the others have improved themselves more.
Yeah, I think that you would look at this as the Red Sox improving their floor as a team. They're addressing some of the critical depth issues that they had. They didn't have a lot of left-handed relief options after what they already have in the big leagues, so they've stabilized that with Matz. And then with May, they would be I think that they would be achieving exactly what we were talking about, where you're giving yourself a guy with a chance to be a number 4 starter in the postseason or a bullpen weapon in the postseason if Walker Buehler kind of catches, if he catches a wave moving down the stretch. But in the relative terms, that's a more difficult one to sift through, since all of the other 6 teams that are really kind of with you in the front of the pack have probably addressed more holes.
A couple late reports here to jump in. San Diego Padres getting Nestor Cortez and the Yankees acquiring shortstop Jose Caballero from the Tampa Bay Rays. He can just walk across. Are they still in a rain delay? Get that game going again. Let's hold it up till he gets over.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we have to remember, and I think, JP, you spoke to this a little bit about your time in Oakland, is that when you get to the postseason, when you get to where you want to go, and especially deeper, you don't want to be sitting there, man, I wish we did this. We got caught short. And I remember Mike Hazen saying that a couple of years ago. He was beating himself up at the deadline because he's like, I did everything I could. I knew we needed a pitcher, and here we are pitching a bullpen game in Game 4 of the World Series. And as an executive, as a team, you got to remember that right now. You do not want to get caught short like a lot of teams did get caught short last year.
We had the Cespedes trade right about this time. We nailed the trade. We overtook the Nationals. We went to the World Series in 2015, and we had great pitching, and that's what carried us. But we needed a bat. We went out and got the bat. Makes a big difference.
What'd you give up for him? Do you even remember?
Yeah, we gave up Fulmer, who was a good arm, but like I told those guys, I said, so what? You're getting an everyday guy.
That's the point.
Yep.
I like it. But now, what did they do? I don't want to say bare minimum, but the minimum. You know, as far as they needed a fifth starter. You know, they need someone to go Friday night, or maybe not. Maybe he still won't go Friday night. You know, you can always add a bullpen arm. You always want to add a bullpen arm whenever you can. So you add that, and you add a starter that you can slide in, but it's just not, you know, Bednar. It's not Gino Suarez. It's not Naylor. It's not, you know, Merrill Kelly that the Rangers got. These are teams that they're competing with.
Got Dustin May. This is when we last saw him. Was it Sunday? Was it the last game of the series?
Yep.
Gabe, we're not going to show Bregman. We're not going to show.
Why didn't we show the hanging slider?
Strikeouts.
He's got good stuff.
He's one of our guys now, Lou.
Listen, velocity's down a little bit. He was 99, 98 averaging before the Tommy John. He's now 95, 96. He saw some 97. That sweeper plays. I mean, the stuff plays. There's no question about it. So, you know, you've added a nice arm to this whole mix.
Yeah, I don't think you should look at this guy as like, oh, we didn't get Ryan, and this is all we got. This guy's got a good arm.
Yeah.
He can help you. He's definitely an upgrade. Like you said, there's not a lot of depth in AAA, so adding this guy is a big plus.
The Tampa Bay Rays just got Adrian Hauser. So they're I've been talking about Adrian Hauser for 2 days. Like the ultimate kind of league average guy, but he's had a really good year. What does that mean for the Rays? What does that tell us about what the Tampa Bay Rays are doing?
Ours not to question why, ours but to do or die.
I mean, are they in? Are they out? What is Tampa Bay trying to do? They're just below your left elbow on those standings there. So that's,
I mean,
but it's only 3 games.
Here's the thing. What was Detroit last year at this time?
Oh.
9?
Yeah.
Games
They
out?
had a 1.8% chance of making the playoffs.
So, you know, you look down that list. I mean, I don't even know if we go far enough to the teams that are actually kind of still in it. And Anaheim's still there as well. I mean,
Cleveland.
This is still 9 teams kind of competing for 3 spots, maybe.
But if you look at him, really, who do you really believe in? That's what you have to look at. I don't believe in Kansas City. I don't believe in the Angels. I don't believe in Cleveland. I believe those first 4 teams are the teams that are going to be fighting for those wild card spots.
And Tampa, I mean, this is startling for Tampa Bay because their position playing group was decimated today in Yankees Stadium, right? They end up with Yandy Diaz being drilled and having to leave the game. They end up with Aranda having, getting run over by Giancarlo Stanton and having to leave the game. This is that's a surprising development.
And when you look at what the closers have gotten, I'm surprised Fairbank's still there.
There's 3 minutes for that to happen.
I think he would go. Yeah, we're not done yet. 3 minutes, they'll probably flip Hauser before it's all said and done. Here's the interesting thing to me, okay? If you want to shoot down to like the 25th of August, a month from now, the Red Sox schedule, you're going to go through a stretch where you're playing Baltimore, sellers, Pittsburgh, sellers, Cleveland, not buyers, and Arizona, sellers, Athletics, sellers. You're going to have about 7 series with teams that kind of blew it up here over the last couple of years.
The A's might be the best team, because they're the one team that's going to stay together, and they got the young kids. But I agree with you. There's a lot of ground to be made up there.
And that's why, you've talked about this on the air in the past. It's when you play a team is so important.
Yeah.
If your schedule had you playing Pittsburgh at the beginning of the year, they're playing pretty good baseball.
The worst teams in the league have a 3-week stretch. You don't want to play them. Right. I mean, the Marlins are playing great baseball. Earlier, remember the A's, you were like, man, they can actually compete this year. And then I think they lost 25 of 30, immediately afterwards. So we've seen that before. We played teams that are like, you don't want to play this team right now.
Well, how about
They're
catching
hot.
Pittsburgh facing Skeens? Just
Exactly.
that alone.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to stay on the air right through the deadline, which is now 2 minutes away. fax machines are jamming.
Searching for ones that work.
Yeah,
Kinko's.
Yeah, we always have. You got to tell us that story real quick.
We traded Scott Rowland, and you have to have it done at the deadline, which is coming up here.
Has to be filed
Has
with
to be
the
filed
league.
and sent into the league, and we couldn't get the fax machine to work. It broke in Toronto. We had to run a guy down to Kinko's and send it through.
Yeah, the future of the franchise just left with an
Rowland
intern.
he waived his no trade to Toronto. I said, I got to call this guy back and say, you're not coming now?
The fax machine, Jim. You don't want to come here anyway. We don't have fax machines that work. We always do have to take a moment. Rest in peace, the great Nick Cafardo, doing the show here in 2008. Nick stepped off. I'm getting ready to say goodbye, and he literally goes, hang on, they just traded Manny. And then goes back on the phone. I was like, oh, we'll keep it here for a little bit. And that's how we broke that news. So we are a minute away. And again, to your point, it's no longer fax machines. There's because of Toronto, they now have to do it all electronically. But we talk about the deadline. The deadline is when those deals have to be filed with the league. So quite often, the news of those last-minute trades, and that's when a lot of the big ones are done, those trades don't trickle out until well after 5 or 6 o'clock in this case. That's why we stay on the air as we go right up through it. So just because you haven't heard anything from the Red Sox here in the next 26 seconds doesn't mean they didn't do something. In fact, again, a lot of these deals are being filed right now, right in these final minutes. That's when a lot of things get done.
You mentioned the Manny one that was broken on the air, right? The Red Sox didn't make an announcement about it until like 4 p.m. the next day.
Yeah.
Right.
And like literally would not acknowledge it for hours after the fact because there were complexities with regards to no trade stuff that had been riders that had been put alongside that deal. So
Put down your number 2 pencils. The deadline has come and gone. All right. Time to pass it into the professor. That's it. Your essay is done. Have we heard anything?
no, but I think you have until 6 o'clock and 59 seconds. I
is
could
that
be
right?
wrong about that, but I know that was the case
That
with the
can't
draft
be
deadline.
true.
I'm not kidding. With the draft, it was certainly
What's
that
this, a
way.
soccer game?
We're in injury time. We're in injury time now. We're in
By the way,
stoppage
what do you
time.
think Derek Falvey's? Derek Falvey is like, no, there's no room for interpretation. Derek Falvey does not have to budge a minute.
Well, you know
for
what he
this.
might be thinking, and it's just the thought. He might be saying, instead of me just locked into one team, why don't I just take this to the winter meetings and open it up to the other
How often
clubs?
do you do that? How often do you get really close to something and then say, you know what? If I can get this now, I can probably get that or more this way.
Yeah, I think that doesn't happen a lot, but that's probably the line of thinking right now. I could probably get more if I open this up.
I mean, I think everybody would have loved to a guy like that or somebody with control, right? The guy's down in Miami, but that heavy lifting, that's really done in the offseason,
Yeah.
right? This is about what rental can you kind of grab to help me down the stretch.
So now you wait to see what deals have come flying here down the stretch last minute. Words just coming out. Camilo Doval to the Yankees. Another bullpen piece coming from San Francisco, where he's appeared in 46 and 2/3 innings with a 3.09 ERA. He's a good one.
He's hot and cold, though. You catch him on the right time, you'll love him. He runs a stretch, though, where you sit there and say, please throw a strike. But
But that's kind of what the Yankees have done right now with the bullpen, right? They've thrown a lot of arms in there.
And what they can do is they can ride the hottest guy,
Right.
which is a nice thing to be able to give your manager.
All right, are we past a minute past the trade deadline now?
I believe we are. At least my phone says that
Okay.
it's 6:01, but
So-
still no official word. Sometimes these things take a little bit. Last year, the Garcia one, I feel like took a good 10, 15 minutes to percolate to the surface. More marination, Tom. What's with your
Percolate to the surface,
Yeah.
marination. We are in the trade deadline last minute. So yeah.
Well, isn't that the classic, the Nomar trade, right? Didn't Derek Lowe look at the room and say, "We all made it, boys"? About 20 after 4. It's like, then the door
I
shut.
still have Joe Ryan is not coming to Boston.
Joe Ryan has
is
not been moved.
coming to Boston.
Is he going somewhere else?
That part I haven't gotten yet.
Thanks, Alex.
You know,
Yeah, you bet.
TC, you bring up a good
Have a
Now
great
I got
day, Lou.
another hour to fill with no Joe Ryan talk.
You bring
What
up
might
a good
have been?
point there, though. The clubhouse,
Right.
It goes both ways. Guys are really, really uptight, and some guys are, like, am I going to get out of here? Because there's a lot of things that go into it. You know, Lou, you got to move your family, you got to do a lot of different things, but there is a sigh of relief when that time passes by.
Well, I mean, let's go back, run it back before the 10-game winning streak. There was a real thought in my mind we'd be sitting here today talking most of the day about whether or not Jarren Duran would be traded.
Yeah.
The 10-game winning streak, he's gotten hot, fitting in nicely into three. Whole different story now.
Well, I mean, yeah, that 10-game winning streak changed a lot. I mean, you know, if you were kind of, say you were 4-6 instead, now you're looking at Giolito as being a renter. Now you're looking at, you know, somebody take a flyer on Walker Buehler. Aroldis Chapman would have been one of the big closers here that you're talked about that are being moved left and right. Like, a lot changed when you won 10 games, you know, and that's just a reality of it. So you're in a spot right now, and we'll see if this is going to be it. You know, and this clubhouse is going to look around and say, we added May, we added Matz. And they're going to walk in there and be like, let's go Friday night.
If
Whoever's
it's May,
pitching, I don't know.
If it's May and if it's Matz, and I think May hasn't pitched since Sunday, could you throw him right in there tomorrow?
See, that's the question. He just found out just now that he got traded to the Red Sox, so now he's going to, jump on a
They're
flight?
in Cincinnati, right, I believe? No, they were in Cincinnati. Were they going home after that?
4 days rest, but that's the thing. It got to the point where I know everybody's talking about like Merrill Kelly and Joe Ryan were both lined up for Friday. It's like, what, are you going to trade him on Thursday? Going to fly him in and roll him out in the bullpen and say, go get him? Like, I don't see that happening. I think Friday is still going to be, say, a bullpen day no matter what, and then whoever they add, they'll slot them in somewhere.
Yeah, Dodgers had a day off today. They're in Tampa. So,
Yeah, listen, I mean,
but it's hard to get. I mean, you're going to get them up here tonight and have them pitch tomorrow?
They have put themselves out there. We're not doing. We can talk about Dustin May. We can talk about Steven Matz. But the reality is that they have a playoff team right now. They have a team that, if you go in the postseason, you better be hoping that you get the best out of the guys that you have, including, by the way, the guy under the microscope, maybe more than anybody now, is Walker Buehler. Like, Walker Buehler becomes, you know, we talk about Gallen, we talk about Cease, hoping for the best. That guy has to be the best, better version of himself if they are going to get where they want to go, because they didn't get that guy that they were targeting.
But you know what, Rob? I don't even know if he pitches in the playoffs. If you think about it, if Dustin May's the guy, they'd probably go Crochet, May, and then Giolito.
I mean, but right now, that's what we're dealing with, though, right? We're dealing with Dustin May versus Walker Buehler with a hope that Giolito and Brian Bayo are okay. And that's not what they went into this month anticipating or wanting. They went into this deadline, and I applaud Craig Breslow for saying this. It was harking back to Dave Dombrowski saying, this is what we need, this is what we're going to try to get. He said, this is what we need, this is what we're trying to get, a starter who can pitch in the postseason. They didn't get him, and so now you have to live with that and figure out you're going to get the best out of these guys.
One small caveat to that, though, I'd rather have May starting right now than Buehler. So if that makes me better in the playoffs, I think I help my club.
So if you slot him in as your number 4 right now and Buehler your number 5, you have made yourself better.
Your first 4 guys at least can compete. Yeah. It's not the knockout guys after Crochet, but the other 3 guys, you can compete.
We expect Craig Breslow to talk around 6:45. Maybe they'll get a Bregman extension done between now and then. That would be
Roman Anthony extension.
That'd be a much better conversation at 6:45.
But I don't think that this is going to go over well. You know, I just don't. I think, you know, when you traded Devers, it was sort of like, okay, make your team better, and surprise, it did. You know, the team has played great baseball, and they swing the bats. You made investments in the offseason. You made investments to Alex Bregman. The kids are now here, and it's sort of, I think you have a fan base that's sitting here saying, okay, we've been waiting for the kids. This team is in the playoffs. Now is the time to kind of invest in this current group. And I like May and I like Matz. It's just not, I think, what a lot of people expected. You know, because, and this is what I want to ask you, because it's been 4 or 5 years, okay? And I know in 2021, you know, they got Schwarber and all this other stuff. Greg Breslow's on year 2. Does he care that it's been 5 years, or does he just care that it's just year 2? In other words, does he sit there and say, listen, I'm sorry that, you know, for 3 years or 4 years under Hein Bloom, you guys didn't do what you want to do, but this is my second year. I'm doing his timeline different than a fan who sat there and said 5 or 6.
I think there's a couple of factors we got to take into consideration here. One, everything is driven by ownership. You know, how committed is ownership to him to do what he wants to do? And the second thing is, what is his long-range plan? I don't think you can have a long-range plan in Boston. I don't think anybody has that type of lifespan. And I think if you're a competitor in any way, shape, and form, you want to win. And Boston's a place you can win. It's not like you just went to Tampa Bay or you went to Minnesota. You have opportunity to win in Boston. So I think it's hard to look at any of your fan base or anybody in that clubhouse and say, we're thinking about doing this, we're thinking about doing this, our model tells us this, our model. I got to believe they put a scoreboard up for a reason. You want to win.
Yeah.
So it'd be a hard place not to show up every day with the objective to win.
All right, we expect to hear from Craig Breslow within the hour, so we will stay here with you until that happens. The trade deadline has come and gone. We know by reports Dustin May coming. We know that the Steven Matz acquisition was announced before midnight.
11:50 p.m.
11:50
well, it wasn't announced.
p.m. to be exact. The news came out that
Yeah.
Alex Speier was part of the breaking of the news. That's why he knows it was at 11:50 p.m. And the rain continues to fall at Fenway Park in Boston. Stay with us. We continue after this. All right, here we go. The Red Sox, we know this. They have acquired Dustin May from the Dodgers for James Tibbs III, one of the players they got for the Rafael Devers deal. And they've acquired Steven Matz for Blaze Jordan. We believe that is all. We will find out from Craig Breslow when he talks in just a little bit. Other deals still coming down here and being announced as we move on. Tampa Bay Rays acquiring Griffin Jax, just told that moments ago. No Dylan Cease deal. A lot of rumors that the Astros are working hard to try to finish that at the end. Louis Varland and Ty France go to the Blue Jays as they add Tigers acquiring Charlie Morton, it looks like, here at the deadline. And the Tampa Bay Rays getting a couple of interesting things here as they added Hauser, the starter. They had Jax, the reliever. So, again, you never know what the Rays are thinking, but somehow they all throw it in there and it tends to work for them.
They find a way, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, the Rays traded Taj Bradley for Griffin Jax.
Yes.
Yeah, he was sent to the minors recently, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's really struggled. I actually thought that he might be a guy who the Red Sox might try to make a play on. The Rays had made him available a few weeks ago. Someone who, look, that's a pitching factory. So their confidence that they can create good starting pitching is high, which is why they can deal guys like Zach Littell and Taj Bradley, and then go for true impact guys like Griffin Jax. There are maybe 5 or 10 relievers. More like 10 relievers in baseball who have the kind of swing and miss stuff they do. And he's a guy who probably has frontline starter stuff if you do want to try to reconfigure the role that he's in. He's a pretty fascinating candidate.
All right, let's talk about what the Red Sox have done here, okay? We know that they've added, let's start with May. JP, we'll start with you because you said right now if you had to line him up for a playoff series, you'd have him fourth on this team.
Yeah, I think that this is an upgrade I know everybody wants the sexy guy. He's not as sexy as maybe Joe Ryan, but he gives them
Not maybe. He's not as sexy as Joe Ryan.
I'm trying to be nice there. But he's definitely an upgrade. I mean, they have no depth, like we said earlier, in AAA. So instead of having to go down and run a guy up there and change names as you run up there, this is a guy you can pencil in. He's got a bunch of starts left the next 2 months of the season. He's better than what they've been running out there, and I think he's going to give them a little bit more depth. So I think it's a good move.
We said before, you had to add a body. I mean, no matter what, you could not come away without a starting pitcher.
See, my problem is that I completely emotionally moved on from Joe Ryan. Okay, and then like within the last half hour, I'm going to blame Morosi for even bringing it up. Okay, because then it got me excited again. Because if it wasn't, I was looking at Merrill Kelly, right? But Dustin May to me is I liked his arm. I did the game on Sunday. Like I like the stuff that he has, and maybe there is going to be a little more uptick into the summer. We'll see. Kind of just coming off that Tommy John. So you did add him. You added Steven Matz, and I know JP, you were talking about like offense. I think you're good. I am surprised because they were keeping this Marcelo Meyer injury like close to the vest, and I almost felt like it was because they didn't want to lose leverage. They were looking for maybe a second baseman that they could fill to kind of maybe get Rafaela back into center field on occasion, but no offense, no offensive players, no players.
They don't add a bat at all,
No.
which leads to the question, if everything stays the same, everybody's exactly where they are now health-wise, yada, yada, and this is game one of the playoffs. Abraham Toro's your first baseman? Are you good with Toro the rest of the way and beyond? Because that seemed to be the one place. Could it be Christian Campbell, Vaughn Grissom, somebody in the organization? Where do you go at first base?
Well, it depends on the matchup. I think that's one thing Cora has. He has flexibility to put Gonzalez out there. But I keep coming back to runs scored. They're fifth in baseball in runs scored. The pressing need is the pitching. So I wouldn't worry so much. I know there's not a lot of big thump in the lineup, but there's enough that I think they can get by. It's the pitching that's going to win you in the playoffs.
The question I would ask Alex is, I know what Christian Campbell's been doing lately in AAA. And as we know, you guys see a lot of AAA pitching. It really depends on who that's off of.
Yeah.
Correct? Like,
Yeah.
you know, like, is it a big league arm? Like, he's pulling the ball. Well, yeah, hang and break a ball he's pulling, which is nice. You know, is he pulling 96 in? So my question is, what are we really seeing other than just the numbers from him? Anything different?
I think that there are still concerns about the chase rate and what it's been in AAA, because one of his superpowers last year that made him the minor league player of the year was that he had incredible plate discipline, and then he was able to consistently hit the ball hard in the air. And I don't think that I think that what we've seen since the return to play, since the break for AAA has been better.
Yeah.
But I don't think that he is. You don't rush him back. Like, you wait for, if he dominates, okay. But yeah, I think that you come out of this trade deadline saying that you are okay with Abraham Toro as the first baseman. You hope that someone emerges as a force, you know, whether that is Vaughn Grissom, whether that is Christian Campbell down the stretch, who can handle first base and would leapfrog them. But you don't know that that's going to happen, so you have to be pretty comfortable with what you have.
JP, you've seen a lot of Vaughn Grissom. He's had a great season offensively, and then kind of, I thought, a pretty well-timed pop-off this week. It doesn't look like it's going to happen here. I think I've done everything I can do to happen here. Well, it didn't get him traded, which might have been the plan, so where does he fit?
I think in the end he's a super utility guy. He can play some games at third, he can play some games at short, some games at second, some games at first. I don't see him as an everyday player. He hits the ball the other way really well, which is what Campbell's starting to do now and he needed to do. But I don't see Grissom being a part of the picture this year. Maybe a guy next year that's a 25th guy on a club. But just getting back to Campbell, I think it would be a disservice, Lou, to bring him back up here right now because his head was spinning up to 2 weeks ago. He's just starting to hit the ball the other way, which he really struggled with early in the season. So I would let this kid just stay down there and, to use Alex's word, percolate.
Oh. You know, and so two things. Number one, how this scenario has to play out for the Red Sox is you have to get the best versions of Toro and Romy Gonzalez. And you didn't have that in early July. They was going the other way. Recently, they've been a little bit better, but you can't have them play the back of their baseball cards like coming into this year. You have to be the best version of them, which that could happen, especially with the matchups. You can pick your spots. So that's how that works. The other thing with Christian Campbell is that, to your point, like, this kid's confidence is finally coming back. He made the slight adjustment about not moving his leg quite as much, not as much movement, which we saw. He was getting beat on pitches on the inside every single time. He's finally getting confidence, and I feel like this is like, just keep going, and then see where you land a month from now.
Mike Yastrzemski to the Royals. A little bit of a surprise there as the Kansas City Royals make a move.
I mean, the list you go down the list of American League teams, and there's a lot of teams that did well today. There are. And that's a good move for the Royals. And you go Tampa Bay, what they've done. Detroit, Morton was just the latest. They got a lot of good bullpen arms. So there's just a lot of teams, I feel like, in the American League did pretty well today.
Interesting to look at the Minnesota Twins. They've made 9 trades this week. Of course, Jason Stark pointing out all of this stuff. But 7 pitchers, Correa, Bader, France, and Castro.
Poor clubhouse guy. He's going to be changing names for a week.
That's as big a sell-off as I can remember in a long time.
Yeah. And I think they're going to hold on to Ryan in the offseason, and he may go too because new ownership, they're not going to go anywhere. What good's having that guy? You might as well keep adding young players to the system.
Yeah, I think that it's been a way more active day than anything that we had anticipated.
Well, because it wasn't early on, right? We were sitting here at 11 o'clock this morning and not a lot had happened. It's been a really busy afternoon.
We should know this dance by now, and yet we react every year like, oh my gosh, I can't believe
worst deadline
nothing is
ever
happening. And then the chaos, like especially for whatever reason, it's definitely funneled to be later and later and later, and more teams need deadlines. It drives Dave Dombrowski crazy. I talked to him in Philadelphia last week about this because he moved early. One of the underrated moves that we don't even talk about, he signed David Robertson 10 days before the deadline, gave him money, but didn't have to give up any prospect capital. And he said, well, yeah, like one of the things that I like to do is move early. This is the guy who's made past deadline trades at the All-Star break and been willing to give up a lot because you don't know what's going to be available at the end, right? You end up spending a lot of time on concepts that don't actually come to fruition.
But you have to keep this in mind. Dave comes from the old school of general managers where they were willing to do things early. The new school of general managers holds till the very last minute to see where they are in the standings and then realize the value of what am I giving up, what's going to be the kickback, all of this. So it's a whole different landscape right now.
Major League Baseball has done a lot of good things in the recent years, right? The pitch clock and all these other things. And we see the attention that this game gets over the last week. Everyone's talking baseball about who could be traded, who could be moved. Why did they get away with the waiver trades in August? Because you know as well as I do, a team that just bought here today in 2 weeks is now going to go 3-7 and go, I wish I could move these guys. All of a sudden in August, we were having more trade discussions in the game of baseball. People were talking baseball again because this team all of a sudden was now buyers that were sellers and sellers that were buyers. Like, it's good for the game. Why did it go away?
Well, the funny thing is that in 2012, Craig Breslow was actually part of what was deemed a nothing deadline for the Red Sox. He was traded to the Red Sox from the Diamondbacks at that time, and I think for Matt Albers, if memory serves, and maybe Scott Podsednik. And it was deemed a nothing deadline for the Red Sox. But then on August 24th of that year, you have the blockbuster deal with the Dodgers that completely reframes what the Red Sox did, and it required some return, but they were able to move Adrian Gonzalez, Carl Crawford. But the thing that you're going to see now is there is still going to be change after the July 31st deadline, but it's just giveaways. So Zach Eflin is probably going to be put out on waivers once he gets healthy, and the Orioles will hope that some team picks him up so that they're just going to eat the last $3 million of his salary. And that's the way that you're going to see change in August.
It was good for business.
It was fun, too.
I mean, remember Verlander was a big one. The Astros on the 30, whatever it was.
I want to come back to shame on us for forgetting how this works. Shame on us for buying into thinking that these GMs, these teams are going to trade these high-end starters with years of control. Like, shame on us. Cease wasn't 2 years ago. Crochet wasn't last year. And Joe Ryan wasn't this year because they don't have to. They are playing on the desperation of teams, and they don't have to. They can wait till the offseason.
And the biggest shock of the day we can report now, Tommy Pham not traded.
Oh, surprise.
So that's just not a trade deadline without Tommy Pham moving. Let's talk about the Rays. I don't know why. I'm always obsessed with the Rays because it's always interesting to try to figure out what they have done or where they think they are. They didn't trade away some of the people you thought they might trade, right? They don't trade away Yandy Diaz. They do go get Griffin Jacks, but they kind of not all in. What do we make of where the Rays are today? Are they a more viable playoff contender than they were yesterday?
I mean, if you were just to look at it based on the trades, you might say that they've done a very interesting job of reconfiguring, and maybe they're kind of playing. Maybe they're kind of exactly where they were, but better positioned for the longer term. For me, the injuries that they withstood today, I don't think they can afford those. I don't think they can afford the hit to Yandy Diaz or to Aranda. Like, those guys have been carrying their lineup.
You know the severity of it, though? Was it just this?
We don't know, but even like you lose those guys for a week or for a few days.
I'll say this about the Rays: I was really hoping that they'd be sellers, because I still think it's a very good team. I look at their rotation. They still got 5 guys. I know they just moved Bradley, but now they got 4 guys that have made every single start. You put Griffin Jacks in front of Crazy Eyes, Fairbanks. You know what I mean? Like, they catch the baseball. They play the game the right way. This kid can hit. Caminero can hit. I was praying that they would sell off, because I still think they're a good baseball team that can stay in it. If these guys are healthy.
Yeah, injuries aside, I think if you look at the guys they traded, and tell me if I'm missing somebody, but if you got Hauser and you got Jax, you gave up Taj Bradley, you gave up Littell. I'll take Hauser and Jax. I think they're better. Like, as long as they're healthy, I think they're better, which is something that we didn't think we'd be saying right now.
So that's going to be where the Red Sox will be battling and taking on as they try to tie up a wild card spot. Yankees have certainly improved themselves. Toronto made moves. Kansas City, we told you, went in and made some good moves. So Houston and Seattle, most of the American League teams have made some significant moves. Over in the National League, Mets went out and got Cedric Mullins as the National League. Cedric Mullins, and so, yeah, what do we make of the Mets?
I like the Mets moves.
Super pen.
Yeah, I mean, they went all in terms of the bullpen, and Cedric Mullins' offensive year isn't great, but he's the perfect. I've always wanted to see Cedric Mullins on meaningful games on a good team. That he's not being relied on. You're the guy.
And it's the one position they've struggled with is center field. So you can run him out there and just play defense for us.
And all those super closers that went, they were in the National League. Bednar, he was the one guy that kind of went with the Yankees. Yeah. But they've built some serious bullpens, out there. And again, Jax to go with Fairbanks, that's a pretty good bullpen as well. So you got to give them credit. And Sir Anthony up in Toronto. So it's like you start looking at American League teams. I don't know what you guys feel about it. I think Seattle's the big winner.
100%.
I don't think it's any doubt. We'll come back to the American League. Listen, I'll be in. Our full disclosure, we're here for 2 hours. It's an unscripted show. They were telling me to go to Matz, Steven Matz, and I was like, all right, we'll talk about the Mets. Let's see what the Mets have done. All right, so that's on me. Nobody cares.
Hey, Matz was a Met one.
Meet the Mets. Meet the Mets.
I could have been smoother and tied that all together, but I'm not. So let's go back to the Red Sox and go back to Steven Matz, because yes, the Mets did make some moves to help themselves, but we don't care about the Mets. Steven Matz added to the bullpen here, and again, just more arms, right? We talked about it with the Yankees. You said you ride the hot hand. You got some guys here who have some options. You can move a guy down and ride somebody hot for a while.
And you look at some of those guys in the Red Sox bullpen, they've been used a lot, so this can take a little bit of the load off. I always looked at it this way. The last 2 months of the season, you're looking for as many matchups as you can get. And if this gives you an advantage in 1 or 2 games, it's an advantage you didn't have earlier. So depth for me is very, very important.
I actually like the Red Sox bullpen. I still think it's very good. And I know some people take some heat, but when you're upset at what Jordan Hicks has done 2 of the last 3 times, I get it. And he was put in a weird spot because some guys weren't available. Alcala's another one that I think for the most part has been fantastic, other than maybe a return to Minnesota.
He just does
where
it.
he
It's
just
kryptonite.
Felt like he just can't command the baseball, but you look at this 8 guys they have out there. Steven Matz joins them. A good reliever is going to be going down to AAA, and that is good for the organization, not for the reliever, because I was often that position player that was told, you're going down. But you try to create this time of year where if something does inevitably happen, you bringing up somebody. Now, whether it's a lefty like Murphy, I don't know. Bernardino, I don't know. I don't even know who else has options in there.
Cooper Criswell is, will probably
Cooper
go
Criswell
down
right now.
Quickly, yeah.
But how many lefties do you want on the big league?
It's funny because, and this is going to be, it is fascinating because it's so much so team dependent on whether or not this super stacked left-handed group is really useful to you, right? The first team that you face is going to be the Astros, who don't have any left-handed hitters in their organization who are healthy right now. They're still trying to get Yordan back healthy, and so it's going to be really interesting to see whether or not Matz and Wilson are going to be able to both find their way into games.
But I want to what I said at the beginning of the show, and I'm anxious to get you guys' take on it. My weird obsession with I like veteran bullpens. I really like guys who know what a season to get through a season is like, isn't going to freak out if they have a bad outing, knows what it's like to be under pressure situations. And Steven Matz is that guy. He's a veteran guy. Yeah, there's flaws. He against right-handed, he gives up a ton of hits, all of that. But I love that dynamic. I've seen the best teams have that dynamic. I don't know if that's a thing or not.
Well, I think you have to look at the Red Sox, how they're built right now. Crochet's the one guy that can get you into the 7th inning. On occasion, Bayo, 6th inning, right? After that, the other guys are five and fly guys. So your strength has to come with the depth you can build in that bullpen. And Caron knows on the days those pitch, I need a healthier bullpen. Crochet can give my bullpen a little bit of a rest. And once again, I hate to keep being redundant on this, but you come down to August and September now. Every game is so important, and the more bullets you got to fire in those games, the more strength you're going to have. So I think depth in the bullpen, when your starters aren't 1 through 5, you're going to need those
And you
guys.
got these lefties, too. You think about Crochet's in there, you get the righty lineup, right? But when Bayo's in there and Buehler's in there and Giolito's in there, the lefties are in there. First guys out of the pen. Now you got a guy like Matz that can come in the 6th inning for that lefty-righty because they're going to put all the lefties in against the righty starters that you do have. I think that you've picked up 2 good pitchers. You know what I mean? I know everybody, the expectation was higher. And I'm sitting there locked in on a Joe Ryan. I got to get out of my mind. Okay, Merrill Kelly, I got to get out of my mind. But you've acquired 2 pitchers. So I think you look at that clubhouse, and a guy like Walker Buehler's vouching for Dustin May. Dude, you're going to love him. The guy's go out there, he's going to throw it. You know what I mean? Everybody knows Steven Matz. So I do think you've sort of quelled the dugout, the clubhouse, a little bit. They've added some arms. Offensively, I think this is a group that's just fine, let's just go grind. We've done it all year with different parts and guys stepping up. So it'll be interesting coming out Friday. Of course, the question is who's starting on Friday night now.
I think you raise a good point about Buehler and May. That's a big thing, or it's a thing.
It is.
Where they ask, hey, what's this guy like? How can he handle Boston? Because we've all seen some guys who can't handle Boston. And, my co-author has also signed off on Dustin May as well. But this is a thing. They ask around, hey, how can he handle? What's his personality?
As long as he can vouch for him.
Yeah.
Because there is a chance where it's I don't know, never.
Exactly.
Well, I will say this, we began, again, let's say Joe Ryan was never on the table. I'm with you. I had put that away. I had come to terms with no Joe Ryan. Then John Morosi got us all fired up again. But if I thought coming into this, we said this morning, if you weren't going to get a number 2, you had to get a number 5. And my concern was that number 5 would be just another guy. I think Dustin May is better than just another guy.
100%.
So I think if your expectations had gone to they're going to get a number 5 starter, they actually exceeded those expectations. Problem is most of us had the expectations that you were going to go get a number 2. They didn't do that. So they failed in that, but they improved themselves, which, if you're going to grade it, is that a C, a C+? It's not an F. No. But it's not an A or an A-.
No.
Yeah, I think that one flaw that they have had this year is beyond Crochet, the lack of swing and miss stuff. I do think that when you move May into the rotation ahead of a Fitz, then clearly you've upgraded that element of things. And you saw the movement on his pitches, right? He throws some nasty stuff. And there's all kinds of movement. You can play a lot of interesting games if he's able to command reasonably with pitches that have that kind of pitch shape, right, where you can truly spread out the strike zone, work the whole width of the plate, and plus add on probably 6 inches to either side. Then you can do a lot of game planning. But I do think that we've seen a number of teams take that kind of super pen approach. And to your point, JP. You need, in order to make it through October, we're no longer at a point where it's okay, get 3 good relievers and you're good. No, you will burn them out if you only have 3. You need 8 at this point in order to be able to get through. The whole October tournament, because you see the way that stuff backs up round after round of the postseason. So I think that's the real question. The fact that they didn't add swing and miss, true swing and miss stuff. Matz is able to get swing and miss against lefties. So okay. there's kind of a check mark there, but it isn't the level of impact that other contenders made, but it is certainly directionally, it puts them in a better spot.
I'll say this. So, like that Sunday when he threw against the Red Sox, talking with people with the Dodgers, they were saying this year, like his stuff, he's fallen in love with the sweeper a little bit too much. So now you start talking about, okay, what do the Red Sox see? You know, how do they affect usage and what we want to do? He said when he uses his four-seamer more, he's been more dominant, but he's become so sweeper-sinker happy that there's room for that four-seamer on top of the zone that he's not taking advantage of. And when you look at some of the numbers, I mean, they're hitting 168 off his four-seamer. It's just used 15% of the time. It's been sinker, sweeper, that's it, like 80% of the time in his usage. So does this all of a sudden they come to him and say, okay, let's start tinkering with this. Maybe they saw it with Alcala.
Yeah.
Right? Fastball, curveball. They've seen it with Hicks. Get rid of this pitch, get rid of that pitch.
But it's a super interesting dynamic with a rental who's about to be a free agent. So is he going to be open-minded and think, okay, like this is what you're saying. Sometimes that fresh voice, when you do change organizations, it's like, oh, the organization I've always been with me no longer wanted me, so I have to be a little bit open-minded about change. Or does he see free agency on the horizon and say, I know what makes me good. This ain't it, what you're talking about. Right. So it can go either way, but that's where the conversation that you're talking about, where you have a Walker Buehler enter the conversation and say, I can vouch for this guy and his willingness to be adaptable or competitive.
Well, vouch for the organization.
Here's a reminder for Walker Buehler, for Dustin May. You know how much money you can make in a 2.5 week span in October? A lot. And, and if you get on a run, go ahead. And I know that that's not the be-all, end-all. That's not what we're talking about. But this is a motivating factor. But I do want to come back to this. I think we cannot ignore the fact that they went in and they said, this is what we need, and we did not get it. I applaud Craig Breslow for proclaiming that, because you were putting yourself out there. We talked about it, they talked about it, but you did not get that. And JP, you have a better idea than I. When you get in there and you probably had teams where you said, we absolutely have to come away from this deadline with something. I don't know what that's like, but to me, you got to get it. You got to get it.
Well, we're not going to know until after the fact. You're not going to know.
I know.
You're not going to know how deep they went and how.
And it could work out. And it could. Listen, I mean, it could work out. They're good acquisitions. They could help. I think it's a great point about the bullpen getting through a postseason run. Cleveland, Detroit, the Dodgers ran out of pitchers at the end. So, yeah, this can happen. I'm just saying that in terms of how people are going to react, that's how they're going to react.
I can share some things with you as far as we've been in conversations with people where they say, we want so-and-so. We say, yeah, we want so-and-so on top of that. Okay, you got them. We want so-and-so. And they just keep going and going. And you say yes, and you're up to 4 players. And how many guys do you want? At what point is this going to stop? So I don't know the depth of those conversations.
Right.
They might have said yes on 3 different guys.
We automatically think it came down to one last minor leaguer, and they said, no, well, you don't know, right? The conversations are one thing, and maybe Craig Breslow will give us a little insight of that, maybe not. We'll hear from him coming up at the top of the hour. Craig Breslow expected to talk to the media. We will have that for you.
Is that Jemai?
It's very quiet. Jemiah's gone on the tour. Jemiah is taking the tour of Fenway. At the ballpark, you take a look over there. It is dry now, and the Red Sox making a couple of moves. We'll see what the fan base thinks of it in the coming days. All right, Jersey Street, where somewhere Jemai Webster, he might have gone home by now, actually. Jemai might have just said, there's nothing going on here. Deals are done.
I mean, there are no major leaguers who are going to be leaving, right? So
Right.
who's he going to
The
be?
whole idea was, we had the Justin Masterson shaking everybody's hand.
With
in
a
the
gift
parking
certificate
lot.
from Joe
Joe
Castig.
Castiglione chasing after him to give him the final gift certificate for doing the radio pregame show live on our air.
Times have changed in so many ways.
Those are great moments in trade deadline history. We welcome you back. It's all said and done. Red Sox getting a reliever, Steven Matz, the lefty, and a starter, Dustin May, the righty from the Dodgers. Trying to sift through to see any last-minute announcement. Haven't seen any big blockbusters coming down at the end. This is what we're hearing. James Tibbs III and Zach Earhart sent for Dustin May. What do we know about Zach Earhart?
University of Tampa, played well this year.
Great signing originally.
Signed by a great scout.
Scout was all over it. Who signed him?
My son Dante.
You wouldn't have been able to get May without your son.
That's it.
Thank
there
you.
you go.
Thank you for your
Give him a
service.
raise.
Zach Earhart had been off to a really nice start to his professional career after being drafted by the Red Sox. He'd done a really good job of controlling the strike zone, so showing some tools to hit for average with on-base skill. But the Red Sox are dealing from a position of strength with regards to guys like Earhart and Tibbs, who was behind other outfielders in the system, particularly with Justinson Garcia up in AAA, who's a big JP's bullish on Justinson Garcia.
So you see the notable players not traded, and let's shoot right to the bottom of that list. Jarren Duran not traded today. Did anybody wake up this morning thinking there was even a chance Jarren Duran was getting traded today?
I was worried that he would, but I do think the Marcelo Meyer injury changed everything. I wonder how much it changed really the deadline in their approach and what they were able to do. I don't know, but to me, Jarren Duran's name's been thrown out there an awful lot lately, and maybe it's just me, but I prefer to keep the guy that's done it rather than keep the guys that you hope can. Like Jarren Duran put a year together last year that you only hope others can do. I've seen it, not for a month, not for a first half, not for a second half. Like, I saw it with my own eyes, and I do not want to let this kid go at all. Cora has talked to him the perfect player for the way the game is, and I think he's exactly that. You got him for 3 more years.
I think that the last line that Alex Cora had at the end of yesterday's post-game conversation with the media may have been, "He's a great player, and I'm glad that he's with us." Right? And we didn't just see it in 2024. For the last month or so, Jarren Duran has been arguably the best player in the American League in baseball. Right?
2023 was a really good season too, by the way.
Yeah, and so we're now seeing him. They couldn't. I think you're absolutely right, Lou, that the Meyer injury traded everything, because what we had been talking about as a logjam and the Red Sox having this potential surplus of outfielders no longer was a surplus, because Cedar Rafaela has now been playing second base. All 4 of those guys have been getting playing time, and you don't have the same squeeze that you once did. More, on top of that, there's the question of, is Yoshida going to be able to produce consistently? So if you have a guy who's at the center of what you're doing, both in terms of on-field and a significant clubhouse guy, I think that would have been almost impossible to pull off mid-year. But yes, I think that everything changed. I think that the Red Sox had openness in early July when it really looked like a crowded situation, and I think that interest kind of sailed with the Meyer injury.
Yeah, I heard the same thing. Early July, I heard at least one team said they introduced Jarren Duran in talks, which wasn't a surprise because, like you said, they have the crowded, he has value. And then last week you hear from other teams saying, no, they have taken him off the board. And I think that remained the same. It didn't make any sense. Like, to come back to what you guys were saying, it didn't make any sense in a lot of ways, including the clubhouse dynamic. This was not the Rafi Devers situation.
The opposite.
Nobody would have said the day after Jarren Duran is traded that he was one of 26, right? That's a fact. And so that they would have had some serious damage control. That was just part of it. The most important part was that to Lou, your point, you just can't find guys like this. I mean, he is such a dynamic player at his best. Good luck finding that guy.
I don't think anybody's untradeable. And if this is the one guy that can bring me what I need, I wouldn't let this hold me up. I know he's a great player. I love watching him play. I love the way he goes about his business. But if you turned around and you could tell me that you could get 2 quality players for Jarren Duran, I wouldn't let it get in the
Well,
way.
here's the one area where I wonder if the Red Sox remained open on Duran right to the end. Joe Ryan. I think that, as you know, but that's imperfect for the Twins now, right? Because they've changed their time horizon for what matters to them. If they're no longer competing this year and maybe not next year, then the idea of 3.5 years of Duran for 2.5 years of Ryan changes on their end. But like what I had been told a couple of weeks ago was that Duran, as the anchor of a package, wasn't going to get it done for Minnesota with Joe Ryan anyway. And that was before that. So I think that was always going to be a complicated.
And I'm not telling you to trade Jared, but what I look at is if he can bring me something, and I'm not talking prospects.
Right.
I'm talking major league for major league, and he's the one chip you got. You got Garcia coming. You got Anthony. You got Abreu. You got a pretty good outfield setup. It would have to be a home run deal, but that's the one guy that could give you a home run deal.
And it has to be in the offseason, especially now.
Yeah, I
Isn't
agree.
it- So we're going to be talking about this again. In December, we'll be at, I think it's at Disney. We're going to be at the Winter Weekend. So everyone's going to be talking about it. Swan and Dolphin, here we come, all right? So, but aren't we going to be having the same conversation about Jaron Duran in the offseason?
Well, somebody, and that's what I was going to ask you. You look at this outfield, right? We would think Roman Anthony's off the table. Does Cedar Rafael, the contract, help, hurt? Like, you know, Wilyer Abreu, potential, what you see for 3 weeks, you know, and then it's cold for 2 weeks. So you're the GM, you're looking at it. Those guys have more control than, say, Jaron Duran. Who's more valuable? Is it Jaron because he's done it?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, people are going to want him.
Yeah.
And I think you can ask for major league players back. You're not looking at a boatload of prospects. I wouldn't be happy with that. How do you look at your fan base and say, oh, we got 4 prospects for a proven major league player? He's going to bring me value for value. I remember when we got Johnny Damon, win the trade. Johnny Damon, big name, right? Helped our club. We got to the playoffs with him. Big name for big name, I would do it. I wouldn't be giving this guy away, obviously.
No, but I think that I'm with you. You get good players for a guy that's fine, but for the here and the now, I think it's what you were saying, TC. The here and the now for this team, Jaron Duran he's more than 2 players.
Yeah.
He fills a very specific role in a lot of ways which 2 players can't do. This isn't Nomar Garciaparra because you don't have David Ortiz and Manny Ramirez
Or
and all
even
these
Rafi
other guys.
Devers. He's not Rafi Devers, where you had Bregman at third base, and he's
Exactly.
not going to have a chilling effect on the clubhouse by leaving. Jaron Duran leaving, you talk about the clubhouse, there will be an aftermath to the loss of Jaron Duran in that clubhouse, and if it's over an 8-week span, that could be enough to scuttle your season.
But players come and go. You know, you have to. And this is where my
You're such a GM.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, if Jared Duran goes out and you bring someone of equal value in, there isn't anybody in that. When Bregman leaves next year, are they going to feel like that breaks the club?
Bite your tongue, JP. You just stop right
Why
where
do you
are.
think Craig Breslow pushed it back to 7 o'clock? Breslow pushed it back to 7 o'clock because he's on the phone with Boris right now. It's not true. I don't know.
No, I mean, Bregman's a big piece. You watch him just in the dugout.
To your point, if you were, and I don't want him to, I'd rather do something else, find somewhere else to go. But still, you have all off season to sort of make up. You're getting talent back for him. You also have an off season to sign this guy and put a team together. You know what I mean? To sit there and say, okay, but you can't do that at the deadline.
No.
You just can't. And I mean, what contending team is going to give you a big league starter back that wants Jaron Duran? It doesn't fit.
Let me put you on the GM seat.
Here we go.
Would you trade the kid from Minnesota for him? Straight up.
Joe Ryan?
Yeah.
Ooh, no.
Tough job to have, isn't it?
No.
You wouldn't trade him?
No.
How about you guys?
I want him in the outfield.
Would I trade Duran for Joe Ryan?
Yeah.
In the offseason?
No, right now.
No.
Yeah. Well,
You would have.
In a minute. In a minute.
so,
Pitching.
I'm 5th in baseball in runs scored. I know he's a great
But
player.
JP, you keep coming back to the 5th. How many times did we see them go on their bad stretches where they did not score runs against good pitching?
So when they've got good pitching, they're going to win 2-1, 3-1. They're not going to win 2-1, 3-1 with some of the guys that are running out there.
Let me tell you why. One thing, too, because I think you have like 3 veterans on this team. 3.
Yep.
You know, I think you got Story, you got Bregman, you got Refsnyder. And I think Jaron is he's like a year away from being that. And if you pull that out and it's Abreu, Cedar, and Anthony and how good they are, they're all great. I need older players. Like, I need older players. Like, I need veterans.
I like Duran.
Yeah.
I love him. I love the way he plays. But if he's the one chip that I have to fire to make me better,
And I will say
totally
this,
agree.
I would have agreed a lot more readily with that if Marcelo Meyer were healthy.
But why?
Because I'm scratching the guy every night. Because I'm playing tonight without Abreu. I'm playing tomorrow without
what's
Anthony.
Meyer brought to the team offensively? I don't sit there and say Meyer. Right now, Meyer to me is a young player learning at the major league level. I don't look at him and say, now, Duran's a difference maker in the lineup. Meyer's not a difference. I would even trade Marcelo Meyer for the right guy.
It's the Rafaela move. That's why.
Right.
I mean, that's why Meyer affects Duran.
Because now you got him all in the lineup.
Because you have to move Ceddanne Rafaela to second base, and that you need a center fielder, and that's Jarren Duran. That's the thing. It's not really about Marcelo.
Not about Meyer's value per se. If Meyer was healthy, when they were right before the injury, you were sitting an outfielder every night. Right? You were playing without Abreu tonight. You were playing with Rafael as Anthony as a DH. You were moving guys around because you had one extra guy. All of a sudden, Rafael goes to second base. You don't have that one extra guy anymore. It's harder to trade.
I love the what you do for Joe Ryan, though. It's a good one. It's a good one.
The reason here's why I don't like that construct as a mid-season move, because you're improving in one area and you're making yourself worse in another. Whereas in the offseason, because you can backfill, you have an opportunity to make yourself better and to offset the thing that you're
Game one, Crochet. Game two, Ryan. I'm up 2-0, and I have flashbacks of Gil Heredia starting against Roger Clemens.
We're going to help him through his PTS as we continue.
Fun to talk about, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you've been through, right? Those are the decisions you have to make.
25 years of it. I got the scars. I'll show you later.
I think you just laid some of them out there. There's no doubt about that. We talk about some of the deals that have been made over the years. This is a good one this morning on 310 to Left that we had. Dan Duquette joined us. Talk about a deal you put together here. This one worked out well, right? Heathcliff Slocum going to Seattle. Jason Varitek, Derek Lowe coming back. And talking to a guy who's been in there and been in the room. Here's what Dan Duquette this morning on 310 to Left said about that trade back then.
That was a great deal for the Red Sox. I mean, we were able to get two key pieces. It's kind of interesting because I was talking to Woody Woodward, and they said they were looking for relief pitchers. And during the day, they picked up Paul Spoljarek, a left-handed reliever. And I thought, oh, man, we're out on Seattle. They're not going to go for Heathcliff. And then Heathcliff blew the save in Kansas City. And Woody Woodward calls me up, and he said, Dan, please don't tell me that Slocum blew the save. I said, okay, Woody, I'm not going to tell you that he blew the save. I said, I figured you guys were out. He goes, yeah, well, Lou Piniella really liked the way Slocum threw the other day at Fenway Park, and he thinks he can help us, and we're still interested. So we were able to make a deal, and the rest is history. But, when you are a seller, it's easy, right? Because you have leverage and you're shopping, you're trying to get young prospects. Like I was on the other side of the coin when I was talking to Ben Cherington, and we were trying to get Andrew Miller, and the Orioles hadn't won a pennant in 30 years, and the Orioles wanted to win, and I kept going down player after player after player. Will you please take this player? And he kept saying, no, we need to have Eduardo Rodriguez. We need to have Eduardo Rodriguez. And then we got down to the bottom, and he said, Dan, you got to either give us Eduardo Rodriguez to get Andrew Miller, or I'm going to send him to Dave Dombrowski in Detroit. And it's like Dave already had a good team, and if he got Andrew Miller, he was going to beat us in the playoffs. And I said, well, I guess I'll give you the extortion piece you want. I've offered you 39 other players, but, if that's all what it takes, that's what it takes. And so we got Andrew Miller. We beat the Tigers, but we didn't advance to win the pennant. But we had to give it a shot to try to win the pennant. I know that people don't look very favorably on that in future years when you give up a young player that has value, but you got to get after it when you have a chance to get after it. I mean, that's really why we're playing. That's really what we're trying to accomplish.
And that was on 310 to Left. You can catch it on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, wherever you get your podcasts, all presented by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, the best-selling truck in America for 48 years. And the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. The extortion piece. Have you had to pay the extortion piece a lot over the years?
I remember we were making a trade for Lyle Overbay with Dave Bush. And so Doug Melvin calls me up and says, okay, we got a deal. He goes, but we need something else. I said, what do you want? He goes, Gabe Gross. And Gabe Gross was the #1 pick a couple of years earlier. I said, all right, hold on 1 second. I said, Doug wants Gabe Gross. And they go, oh, we can't trade Gabe Gross. We can't. I said, Doug, you got Gabe Gross. We're done. So I said to the guys, I said, you're going to let Gabe Gross get in the way of us getting Lyle Overbay? Done deal.
Is it different now? Is it different now?
Well, Dan Duquette was a very good GM. Good baseball guy, excellent GM, wanted to make trades. It's different today because guys, I don't think, are so aggressive. I think they're so protective of what they have, and they're afraid to get burnt. And, Billy Beane and I used to talk about this all the time. What do we care who we're giving up? As long as we're getting back who we want. That's what's going to make us better.
How about the Lou Piniella stuff? Would that ever happen?
That's actually a good point. Today I don't think a manager has much say.
I want this guy. He'll
this
make
guy,
a difference.
I've seen this guy, or I saw this guy in Puerto Rico this winter. Yeah. He did this, this, and this. Can we try to get him? There's no more input. And I think that's a lost art because managers and coaches and players know those players sometimes better.
Well, and the other problem I think that's happening across baseball now is we used to talk about future value versus present value, right? It's all kind of morphed into one. It's just value. They no longer look at value as future value. It's just the total value of our portfolio.
Well, what I struggle with is you don't get any more wins in the win column because you have prospects.
Right.
The whole idea is when you show up in a major league game is to win that major league game. That's what should be what your driving force is. I don't know where our game has gotten to the point where you could say, we've got like 4 or 5 years to build this thing and get good. You don't know when you're going to be good. You don't know when that opportunity to strike is going to be there, so you got to take advantage of that window to win.
To your point, even Dan was saying, this is why we're here, is to win. And the thing is, you can build, say, if deep down someone's saying we're really going to be ready next year, that's great in theory, until Garrett Crochet walks off the mound in June because his shoulder hurts or his elbow hurts, or they're healthy. I know they've lost Tanner Houck and they've lost Cutter Crawford, you know what I mean, but they've pretty much stayed healthy.
Look at the Braves.
I mean, you could be the Braves and say, we're going to go for it, and everybody gets hurt. People go down. This guy goes down. And you say, this was the year we were going to do it. And that can happen for 2 or 3. So we always talk about sustainability. I think that's impossible. I really think that's almost, to me, long-term should be 3 years in this game, 3 or 4 years. If you say, we want to win for the next 10. That's impossible to predict. I don't think you can.
I think that it is possible, but it has to happen with you have to be able to operate on 2 separate tracks, like we see it with the Dodgers all the time, in which they're able to make moves they're so deep that they're able to make moves where they're kind of able to reprime the pump with younger players, right? They'll have someone who's on the back of the 40-man roster because they keep acquiring good Major League Now players so they can trade some of those prospects to get prospects who are going to be better.
They're a bad example. They spent $500 million.
There's that too.
And they got $500 million.
Sustainable is possible. It's just expensive.
And they draft well.
The complaint also you hear is GMs now have to win the trade by 80%, 70%, instead of 51%. Just win by that 1%. And I think that's what Dan was talking about. And that's sort of gone out the window. Too many guys, too many teams are doing this. And that's honestly why we probably don't see more bigger deals at the deadline. So, by the way, I was waiting for the John Lester trade with Dan Duquette. That was a good one. Is it on the podcast?
Oh man, the podcast is online, but we did not talk about about Lester.
We do have to get to break because we are going to hear from Craig Breslow. He's about to talk to the media about what went down, what didn't, and see what questions are asked as we continue. Fenway Park in Boston, where the Red Sox are getting ready for a homestand. Tomorrow night, August will begin. The Houston Astros rolling into town for 3-dead game on Apple Plus. Don't forget, nationally televised game, and we are back at it on Saturday before the 11 a.m. Roku game on Sunday. Had players yesterday reaching out and said, "Why is the game at 11?" There's Roku. What's a Roku game? Don't worry about it.
Third 11 a.m. game of the year.
Right?
Third one.
We got to lead the league.
The B game.
11 a.m. starts. We are waiting. Any moment now, Craig Breslow is going to be speaking to the media, see what he has to say about how this all went down. The reliever, Steven Matz, was acquired just before midnight last night. Dustin May, pitcher from the Dodgers, acquired today. Those are the two deals made before the 6 p.m. deadline. There were rumors about other things being discussed, most notably, according to John Morosi of MLB Network, there were talks about Joe Ryan from the Minnesota Twins that obviously did not come to fruition. And so we wait here as they will sit down. I guess go around real quick, and Rob, will start with you because Alex has left you. Alex Speier has run off to
I feel there's a void.
His day job. If you're grading this, what are you grading this trade deadline for the Red Sox?
C-. I mean, I can't get past what you declared that was a priority. Really, the priorities. You know, you look at it, the guy the starter that was going to pitch in the postseason, and then maybe help with the back end of the bullpen, and even maybe a help at first base. And I know they tried, and I know that they were close on some things, but it's a results business. And I think that I'm really anxious to hear Craig about how they viewed it. How the prices probably kept going up and up and up, because I think that JP said it, and he perfectly, which is teams have to remember, if you have the chance to win a World Series, which I felt like this team does, if you added the right things, then you have to do whatever you can to help. And maybe it just wasn't attainable, but that's why I have to give it a C-.
JP?
I'd give it a C. I think they moved the needle a little bit, not a lot, a little bit. The other byproduct is the other teams that they are going up against move their needle a lot more than they did. So that's what brings me to give it a C.
Yeah, I think it's in that category. C-, C, whatever it is. Here's the problem, and JP, you have two opportunities to build your team, right? An off season and a trade deadline. And I feel like there's talk, and there's creating fans out there to believe something is going to happen. If you just sat there and say, we're probably going to sit still, nothing major, and you got Dustin May and Matt's fine. But I felt like there was a sense that there was going to be looking for a number two. And they said it. They're talking about getting a playoff pitcher. So now your expectations are a certain thing. Well, your expectations in the offseason are a certain thing. And for the last 5 or 6 years, there's a fan base that, and I see it all the time, but when I was on sports radio or even on social media, I'd like to think they're going to do this, but I don't trust them to, given what they've seen the last 4 or 5 years. So I thought, it was a missed opportunity. And it was a missed opportunity to kind of dive in, get uncomfortable for a year, or for 2 months, and then kind of revisit this thing in the off season. I like both arms. Don't get me wrong. Right. I like Dustin May. I had that game, and I like Matt's.
Again, they're better, but you're not in a void, right? You're comparing yourself to what other teams have done. A lot of other teams made more dramatic moves. I'm with you all, about a C, give or take. And I keep going back to two things that I was thinking about all day today. One is Tanner Houck. You just, you built this thing thinking you were going to have the Tanner Houck from the first half of last year. You haven't had him, and obviously you've had the injury. And now you don't have him at all. Looks like Craig Breslow is getting ready to talk to the media. So we are getting ready to go to that as he will be talking in just a moment. The other thing is, we say that it's just the importance of a young team making the playoffs, checking off that box, getting the experience of a playoff race, postseason, no matter what happens.
You never know how you're going to play.
And you never know how you're going to play. But even if you got there and you lost in the first round, that's still, to me, an important step forward for a young team, most of which have never been there.
No downside to winning, Tom.
I mean, it is, they have yet to come up with expected wins. That's the one category I have not seen yet. It's actually wins and losses, and that's what you get gauged on. So we are waiting to go to Craig Breslow. He is talking to the media at the end of today's trade deadline. And the Red Sox making the two moves, really one yesterday, one today. Steven Matz, the left-handed reliever, and Dustin May, the right-handed starter. We are going to join the Zoom press conference as it's not an in-person press conference because of the off day. Here's Craig Breslow talking to the media.
And somebody who can step into our rotation and add to our pitching group.
Craig, I know you had talked about wanting to add a front of the rotation starter, maybe someone to slide behind Crochet. How do you feel May fits that role, or if he maybe profiles sort of towards the back of the rotation, and just how you see the rotation in general kind of going forward?
Yeah, well, I think where our rotation has gone, we've followed, and when we've gotten really good starting pitching, we've won a bunch of games. We've been competitive. I think Dustin fits into that group. I don't know how much sense it makes to say exactly what he is ultimately. What he does over the next 2 months and beyond is going to define his time here in Boston. We pursued a number of really impact opportunities. Obviously, not all of them work out, but it wasn't from a lack of trying to be as aggressive as possible, from an unwillingness to get uncomfortable. But ultimately, it takes two teams lining up for those trades to line up.
Craig, did you ultimately feel the price for front of the rotation starters was too high?
No, I don't think this is about an unwillingness to include guys or anything like that. Teams have to like our players in order for that to happen. And, we went into this deadline feeling like, in order to accomplish what we needed to accomplish, what we hoped to accomplish, we couldn't take some of our young minor league players off the table. We couldn't go into this with untouchables, and we didn't. We were willing to talk about all of our guys in the name of improving the team. It just didn't work out.
Craig, how would you describe just kind of your emotional takeaway from this deadline? Are you disappointed you didn't get more done? Are you pleased with what you did? Just how would you square that?
Yeah, I think all of those emotions can be true at the same time, in that, we're happy with the guys that we brought in with Steven and Dustin. But we also pursued real impact players that we felt like could improve our team in 25 and beyond. Like I said, we were kind of uncomfortably aggressive in trying to pursue them, and the players that we were willing to put into deals. And ultimately, it wasn't from a lack of effort. Other teams needed to say, hey, that's enough, or that crosses the line. But like I said, it wasn't about, an unwillingness to talk about our full system. And I think in a lot of ways, some of the deals that we've made, talking about the Crochet deal as an example, and a willingness to give up some of our best young players to improve our major league team, that was instructive in terms of how we approached this deadline. But, ultimately, we didn't line up with other teams in those pursuits.
Craig, in terms of thinking about moves that would have involved the major league team, how much did that change over the month of July? We were talking with you a few weeks ago about the potential for outfield surplus. How much did Meyer's injury reconfigure that potential avenue? And can you give us an update on Marcelo?
Yeah, I think Marcelo is still trying to get as much information as possible. We'll have a second opinion and then determine kind of what the right course is here. So we're still collecting information on that front. But then in terms of, potentially dealing from a surplus with our major league team, I think over the last 2 to 3 weeks, it became clear that all 26 guys on our roster were contributing to what we were doing. And, we weren't willing to take a hit to our major league team and potentially impact the 2025 season, in favor of trying to repackage or repurpose in a way that might have improved the future. And there weren't really opportunities to both trade off of our major league team and improve our 2025 outlook. So we felt like it was best to kind of leave that group as it was and, try to use what I think is a strong and deep system to try to improve the team. And I think, with Dustin and Steven, we did that. But in some other pursuits, like I said, it wasn't from an unwillingness to talk about anybody in our system.
Craig, there was a report from late Wednesday night that you were engaged on maybe the best bat that changed hands during the last couple of days, realizing that most of your focus was on pitching. How much of your time was spent on looking for a bat and one that could maybe help you at first base?
Yeah, we spent pretty significant time trying to add a bat, but someone again that could impact the roster and represent a meaningful upgrade over the guys that we have either on our team or potentially in AAA that we feel like would immediately improve the roster. We weren't able to line up, but again, like none of the deals that didn't end up being executed, in my opinion, came from a lack of being aggressive or an unwillingness to get uncomfortable. But it does take two teams to line up in order for trades to go across the line.
Greg, what can you tell us about Steven Matz and what role do you see him fitting in the bullpen or in the pitching staff in general?
Yeah, so he's obviously been he served multiple roles in the big leagues, but it seems like out of the pen the stuff is ticked up. He's got a really good fastball that plays to both sides. He's a great strike thrower who's been in kind of pressure situations before. So we feel like he's someone that Alex can call upon in the 7th, 8th, 9th inning and get really big outs for us. And if you kind of look at what he's done out of the pen, he's been really, really good.
Craig, considering his history starting, if need be, could you try to stretch him out at some point?
I think I don't want to close the door on anything. That would have to be a conversation. But my hope is that with the current rotation and also some of the younger guys who have recently gotten to AAA, who are likely to get to AAA here pretty soon, that we'll also be able to draw from some of our internal depth. But we're obviously going to do whatever we need to do to try to win games down the stretch here. And if that means getting him stretched out a little bit or taking on a little bit more of a bulk role, then we'll explore it.
Hey, Craig, as far as not having untouchables and needing other teams to like the players, like your players, to make a deal, did it surprise you that what you had, players you presumably like, weren't enough or weren't appealing enough to the teams you were talking to?
I don't know if that is, I don't know if that is surprising. I think a lot of the industry does appreciate the young players that we have in our system. And, we tried to work through different combinations of guys. And like I said, didn't approach some of these conversations as though any players were off limits, and we couldn't line up. And we were pursuing, multiple impact players. And obviously on the other side, teams that were operating as sellers were trying to juggle different concepts. And, for whatever reason, we weren't able to line up. But, I do think that there's pretty widespread sentiment across the industry that we have a really solid group of young players, many of whom are already impacting our big league club. And so, I think the outlook is really good, not just for 2025, but beyond.
And despite your status or your position as buyers, did you have teams calling you about, say, Chapman with what the reliever rental market was doing?
No, I think there are teams that are doing their due diligence and checking in. Obviously we recognize what trading somebody like Chappie would mean, and so didn't have the appetite to go down that path. But yeah, I think everybody kind of makes these calls to figure out what might gain traction and one wouldn't. But we're a much better team when AC can call down to the bullpen and get Chapman up for the ninth inning with a lead.
Craig, maybe I have this wrong, and hopefully you can help me just understand, but you mentioned how it takes two to tango, and some of the other teams weren't really interested in some of your guys, and how you went off to try to make an impact move, get an impact player. But earlier in the season, you traded Rafael Devers for what you called developmental opportunities. And I'm just wondering if there's any regret associated with trading Devers at that time and maybe not trying to get an impact player back for a player like that, who a lot of other teams would have been interested in.
Well, I think what we have to evaluate is how we've played, and I think there are some different considerations to that trade. Again, Rafi is a very, very good hitter and a very talented player. It brought up it created some flexibility in our roster, created a little bit more versatility in terms of playing time and position. I think ultimately we've played very well and won a bunch of games since that time. I think that's how I would characterize kind of the aftermath of the trade. But I think the broader point here is, I understand and we understand as a front office and as an organization how precious and valuable winning seasons are. And so we were doing everything we could over the last 2 weeks to try and bolster the team. But a team has to say yes to our offer or give us some type of counter that we can work with in order to execute a trade.
Craig, what do you guys like about May specifically, and could he start for you as soon as tomorrow with the TBD spot?
I think we're still working through when the right time is to get him into the rotation, just given a bit of a whirlwind day, I'm sure, for him. And sometimes, having to get somebody to travel and settle in and then take the ball in a start could be a hefty ask, but we'll work through that. I think ultimately what we see in Dustin is, a guy who really limits hard contact, keeps the ball on the ground at a strong rate. Feel like that's something that will play well here at our park. Is battle tested, has premium stuff, and a bona fide starter that can take the ball for us every 5 days.
Greg, none of this happens in a vacuum this time of year. When you look around at the wild card picture and the rest of the American League, the Yankees, Seattle, Texas, Detroit, others improved. You might look at it on paper and say they improved more than you did today. How much does that concern you, since this is all kind of all in one pool, at least some of those teams fighting for that same spot that you are?
Yeah, I can't ignore. We can't ignore what other teams are doing. At the same time, our focus today was identifying and pursuing the players that we felt like were good fits for our team. And ultimately, we're all going to be defined by what happens from tomorrow through our last game of the season and potentially the playoffs. And so, I think it's really easy to sit here today and evaluate the trades that were made and how much better we think teams got on paper. Ultimately, those questions are going to be answered for us. Like I said, we were as aggressive as we could possibly be in pursuits. Some of them worked out and some of them didn't. And that's the nature of a trade deadline.
Craig, May is already pretty much well over his career high in innings. How do you look at that going down the stretch and how that affects how he might be used?
Yeah, he feels good. The stuff has continued to trend in the right direction. So, we'll do everything we can to, provide the recovery and resources and monitor workloads the same way we would anybody else, but don't feel like there are kind of restrictions on usage here.
Do you see, Mr. Breslow, do you see Steven Matz taking the role, the spot of Bernardino or Murphy? And what do you saw about tips during his time in the Red Sox organization?
Sorry, with Matz's time in this.
What do you saw in the tips times in the organization, and what spot do you think that Steven Matz will get once he he's on the team.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the spot that he'll take, obviously that will be a conversation that we'll work through. But in terms of what we think he brings, like I said, the stuff has been really good out of the bullpen. He's been an elite strike thrower, and the stability of bringing someone in late in games and leverage situations that is going to compete in the zone is really, really encouraging and inspires confidence. We really like the way that the stuff is played versus right and versus left, particularly the fastball, and feel like he's capable of getting high leverage outs for us down the stretch.
Craig, recognizing that fans are obviously not seeing behind the scenes and everything, you guys made fewer moves this week than you did at last year's trade deadline. Obviously, the efficacy of those moves will play out in the coming weeks. But what would you say to fans who are frustrated thinking that the team is in a really good position and they just watched other teams make huge trades and maybe you guys didn't get some of those players that you were in on?
Yeah, I understand the frustration and the disappointment, because we're all looking at the last week right now in terms of the trades that were made and weren't made, and there's not a lot of sympathy for how hard we tried to get deals across the line. I understand that. We believe that we have a really young, exciting, talented team, and one that is capable of continuing to perform at this level and make it to the postseason. That's what our focus is on. And this, the decisions that were made at this deadline, they weren't driven by, like I said, an unwillingness to be aggressive. They weren't driven by taking a highlighted or reinforced view of 2026 or 2027. We were aggressively pursuing acquisitions that could help us in 2025, and they didn't line up. But I think if fans were in the office during this deadline, they would see that guys that we maybe didn't expect to be willing to talk about going into these conversations, we made available, and we tried to put the most aggressive offers that we could in hopes that they were gonna end in deals. And sometimes they did, and sometimes they don't.
Any other questions?
A little bit about the three guys you did give up, and Blaze and Tibbs and Earhart.
Yeah, so obviously position players, and Tibbs came back in the Devers deal, and Earhart and Blaze, both guys who were drafted and developed here, and three good players. We obviously didn't get to know James Tibbs as well as, Blaze and Zach, but feel like they are really good baseball players. They're going to go on to have successful careers. Each does something that we like, whether it's James's contact, and Zach has started to hit the ball pretty hard, really good defender in the outfield, and Blaze obviously has been performing really, really well in AAA this year. But you have to be willing to give up good players in order to execute deals. We obviously have found that out, and we're willing to do so. But felt like the additions of Matz and May were worthwhile, just given the position of our major league team right now.
Craig, you mentioned Marcelo was going to get a second opinion. Does that suggest the first one wasn't good, or can you give us some insight as where he's at? If he's going to be able to play again this year?
I think we're still trying to figure all of that out, and I think it's been it's pretty common practice at this point, just to get multiple opinions, make sure that there's alignment, in terms of what is happening, what the best course is. So we'll get that information, and we'll figure out kind of what the path is from there.
And similarly, do you have more on Tanner after his appointments this week?
I think he is trying to weigh all of the information, figure out, again, kind of what the right course is. Obviously I've not had a chance to talk to him over the last 2 days, but will tomorrow, and we'll kind of figure out at that point what the course of action is here, and we'll make that available to you guys as appropriate.
I know that you said that you had pursued bats, but in the same vein that about whether the injury to Marcelo changed how you would have explored the possibility of trading from the big league roster. Did it change the aggressiveness with which you were pursuing infield help?
I mean, I think probably to some extent it did, in that we were engaged in more conversations with more teams. I think there were a few different ways, or a few more ways, the pieces could come together, just given Ceddanne moving into the infield. But now that Alex is back in kind of a full go, he can anchor third base. So I think it probably gave us more flexibility in that, hey, if we got, a bat that played, a particular position, there is enough versatility and pieces that could move around. We've seen that from Ceddanne. We've seen it from Romy, from, Toro at both corners. And again, ultimately, I think we were willing to be very aggressive. And we didn't line up with other teams when it came to adding a bat.
And you mentioned May obviously would be a whirlwind for him to start tomorrow. Have you guys landed on a TBA guy for tomorrow?
Still working through that. Wanted to see how today shook out, and then I'll circle up with AC, and we'll make an announcement on that.
These are long days, right? Like, obviously the build up to the what is the general feeling at the end of a trade deadline day?
Yeah, I think you're wired for a few days, and then you kind of come down from it. There's, I'm sure, fatigue setting in around the office. I think people are tired. They haven't slept much. They've been away from families. So, my hope would be tonight everybody has a chance to catch their breath, and then we start to see a very important series tomorrow here at home. So, there isn't a ton of time to dwell on what happened, kind of leading up to today.
Any other questions? Great.
All right, so that wraps up Craig Breslow's media availability. You heard Alex Speier asking how long a day it was, and as JP, you pointed out, Alex Speier just made it a little longer for all of us.
Yeah, so. He passed the baton a little further.
Thank him for that. Takeaways, Rob, you start. Takeaways from what you just heard from Craig Breslov.
I think what everyone will grasp onto is him insinuating that they didn't have the players to get it done. And
the exact quote was, "Teams have to like our players. It takes two to get a deal done. Teams have to like
honestly, that's the first time I've heard that. I mean, basically he's saying and I think he did say we were open to everybody. And I like the fact that he was drawing from the minor leagues, said we didn't want to draw from the major league team, wanted to draw from the minor leagues, but what we had in the minor leagues wasn't good enough to get deals done, which is, I honestly haven't heard that before, because usually, especially for a team that has a lot in the minor leagues.
Well, and it tells you how much has changed in a year, right? A year ago it was the big four in the minors. Now Teal is gone, part of that deal. Anthony and Meyer are up. So if you're talking about the minor leagues now, Christian Campbell's there, but he's under a big contract, so he's not just a young guy. The minor league guys aren't what they were a year ago.
Maybe not the upper echelon,
right,
but they still have some players that you could put together some type of package. I've been in that situation. Lou touched on it. It's a tough spot. I mean, he's got to sit there. He's got to answer all the questions. There's a lot of things we don't know that he went through. We don't know if something got to the 1 yard line and something couldn't push it through. So I give him credit for sitting there and answering and doing his job. But it's a tough job. And look, I'm sure he would have wanted to hit a bigger home run, but unfortunately didn't come to fruition.
Yeah, when you have a deadline like that, again, like you've added a rotation piece, an arm that we like. You added some help out in that bullpen. But you mentioned that's a tough spot. There's nothing he could say that people are going to be like, oh, yeah, it takes two teams to make a deal. We get it. Like, does anybody think that they didn't try anything, and just sat around and didn't try to make a deal? And like you said, there's so much unknown. We have no idea. Were the Red Sox, not willing to part with certain guys? Were they making it hard? Were other teams making it hard? Were there deals to be made where, JP, you would have sat there and said, wait, you turned down what? Like, those are the things we never find out about. We hear rumors later on, but we don't know.
And I'll tell you, don't be surprised if someone didn't ask for Anthony.
Yeah.
I mean, that I wouldn't put that past anybody. So did you move Roman Anthony?
And when it comes to the narrative, too, and I agree with you guys, and I think the truth always lies somewhere in the middle, and there's a lot we don't know. But the fact that so many other teams made so many moves, that's another thing that's going to be hard for people to get their heads around.
Well, it's what fans always do, because I'll sit there and say in Texas what they gave up for Merrill Kelly, and you start looking at your organization, or Griffin Jacks went, Louis Varland went. You know,
what's the equivalent?
Right-handed high leverage relievers went, not closers. Guys who could close, that kind of stuff. Those guys went. What was the asking price for those guys? Were we in on those guys? Right? Like, that's the stuff that I think at any trade deadline in any sport you're left asking. What did you turn down? What were you unwilling to do?
The most important thing is to strike when the iron's hot, because once you give a team, I'll get back to you, someone else slides in there. So you got to strike when the iron's hot, and I don't know if the iron was hot at all.
All right, well, we know this. They've added 2 pitchers, a reliever and a starter, and the Red Sox, with 52 games remaining on the season, going to try to get it done with that. Tomorrow night's game, nationally televised on Apple TV. We are back 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Hopefully none of that. No rain at Fenway Park on Saturday. Let it rain today as we bask in the afterglow of the trade deadline. A bit of an anticlimactic trade deadline for most Red Sox fans. We'll see how it plays out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for everyone who was part of it. We'll see you again Saturday afternoon for pregame coverage.